There's a couple chairs right there.
There are a couple chairs right here.
There's 2 seats up front.
Anyone can come sit over here next to me.
Well, we can move the chairs over there. We just moved them up in case we needed more for you guys, but they're online, so.
Nobody. I mean, there's nowhere to put them.
Nice to stand for a while.
We can put them out in the hallway too.
Yeah, that's probably how they.
Excuse me, team. Just wondering what out here.
Oh, thank you. Those funsies and orange. That's warm.
I know, I was like,
The heat just like doesn't, it's either freezing cold or 1,000,000 degrees, and those in between times are when we just suffer.
all right, April 28th, and it is 4:02, and I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll do roll call of planning commission members first. Joey Edwards. David's here. Steve Stevens,
Here.
David Clark Barrow,
Here.
Jason Rufo,
Here.
Ryan Hill, I think said he wouldn't make it, and David Yurch.
Here.
Thank you, Heather Lind here. County Commissioners, Commissioner Thorpe,
Here.
Commissioner Lee,
Here.
and Commissioner Bullock.
Here.
Any changes or additions to the agenda from staff? Okay. We have minutes to approve from April 14th.
I move to approve the minutes.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Did you have a
First
question?
person is,
We're just about to appoint you, so it's all gonna be. Any updates from staff? I have this joint work session on here.
Yes, we just wanted to kind of talk about the logistics of that. On May 12th, we'll have two planning matters to bring forward before you actually do, I think we just have the two. The Fiedler site plan review, construction and scenic conservation overlay that needs site plan review, and then we have some backcountry zoning review that we'd like to talk through with you. And so we were hoping to do that business. Is that inclusive of our business? And then we were hoping the city would join for a discussion on our joint comp plan. And so what we're asking is your feeling about, we think that we really need a couple hours to work with community builders and in this joint setting. So if we begin at 4 and we're done at 5, we were wondering about going until 7 o'clock, or maybe accommodating that a little bit by starting a little somehow. So we wanna kind of get your thoughts, knowing that we've got 2 items on the agenda, which could possibly be done in about a half an hour, 45 minutes. And then extending our meeting time to 6:30, 6:45, just because we've got a lot on our next agenda. So thoughts, ideas about just running a little bit later than our normal cutoff at 6 o'clock or on the 12th. Does that sound reasonable with everybody?
That works fine for me.
Great. Then we'll go ahead and start at normal time, but we might be running over 6:30 to 7 at the latest, I would imagine. And then the other item for scheduling is our second regular meeting of May falls on Memorial Day weekend, or Memorial Day itself. And so we do have a site plan that we need to get heard in May. And so we're wondering about availability to do a additional meeting in, well, actually, that's the 26th, I'm so sorry. So our second meeting is May 26th, which is Memorial Day. And so we're asking if we could potentially do a meeting on the 27th or another day that week sometime. Does anybody have any objections or any reason that they would need to be gone that week and they might not be able to accommodate a different time
well,
for a second meeting?
I'm fine with that. If there's anything else that's moving also that would potentially conflict. I don't know.
Okay.
Tuesday does not work for me, but Wednesday or Thursday or even Friday would work, if that
Of that week?
changes,
Okay.
yeah, anything.
And
But
I'm good with
I
that
would be, I wouldn't be there on the 27th.
So Heather's good with that, Jason's good with that, Dave?
I can accommodate anything.
Great, Steve, thank you so much. And Dave, I don't know if David Clark Barrel, I don't know if you'll still be with us for that second meeting. You could accommodate another meeting time.
Unfortunately, I think my last meeting's that 12th meeting.
Okay, well, we're up to 4 members right now, so it looks like it appears we have a quorum, and Dave is already as well, so. So we'll go with, should we go ahead and set that for Wednesday, the 28th at 4 o'clock?
That works great for me.
I won't be here. I'm so sorry, I should have contributed.
Oh, but that's a site plan, and that's just
Great,
planning
it's
commission.
just planning
So
commission.
we're
Thank
good.
you.
We're good on that
Great.
one, but hard to navigate sometimes.
Cause I had sent out an email originally, and I did have a forum for the 27th, but Heather, you cannot make it anymore.
Yeah,
So we'll do Wednesday.
yeah, I think that was the one I said I could do it for Zoom maybe, but I'm flying back that day, like I have a weird relative wedding on Memorial Day. And so we fly back on Tuesday. Okay, great,
Other updates, we just had the Yak event on Friday,
it is gonna be weird.
which was a great success. And I will let, Cece, do you wanna talk about how the Yak went?
I was not there.
Oh, okay. Melissa, I have a
What about
stomach
Elsa?
flu. Or
It was
Elsa.
a
I didn't see.
fabulous success. There were a lot of participants and we had more storytellers than we've ever had and so many different mixed media. Yeah, it was wonderful. It was really nice to have the Yak back.
That's awesome. So, for anyone that doesn't know, that is another public engagement, piece of our One Community project, that we are doing as a preparatory step of going into our joint comp plan with the city. And so this is really working on our, values and visioning part of, the work with the community. So we had an event at Freight, and it was an open mic storytelling and, contest with mixed media just to talk about the stories that root us to the community. So pretty exciting evening, and really excited to have that a success. As we just discussed, we have some site plans coming up. We have some discussion on the backcountry zoning that we would like to go through. And short-term rental status is about the same.
It's about the same, yeah. 13, I think, standard license is still available.
Melissa, do you have any updates from the planning board?
I don't think so, tonight's a big night.
We'll just jump right in it.
Yeah, we won't take any more time. We've got a warm room with lots of people. So.
Great. First item under new business is appointment of the new regular member, and due to Dave Clark Darrell's resignation, we would be electing David Merchant as a regular member. I don't know if we need to do anything to do that,
I
just
think just a
state it.
motion
Okay.
and get everyone to agree.
I move to make David, it's Jurich, a regular member of the planning commission.
Great. Can I get a second from someone on Zoom?
Aye.
That works. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. And then we have file 24-04, which is Angel View 2's major subdivision sketch plan, extension request.
Thank you so much. According to the land development code, sketch plans do lapse after 1 year of approval. However, there is a process within the code that states if we receive a request in writing prior to the 1 year extension, and if an applicant can show good cause, the sketch plan can be extended for 1 year. Angel View 2 received their sketch plan approval on April 2nd, 2025. They submitted their request for extension on March 31st. And their good cause that they are suggesting are kind of a layering of different conditions that they are working on. And the first being working with CDOT on their access permit. They're still in a discussion with CDOT that has not been perfected, and that is something that will need to be done before their preliminary is heard. They are also working on their traffic impact study, and due to some road closures and our short building season, they have not been able to address some of those items, as well as it's delayed their geotechnical work that they've been doing. So those are the basis of why they're requesting. They're also hoping to come under the county's augmentation plan for their potable water needs. And so they have been waiting for that to be available as well for consideration. And so those are the reasons that they have asked for a 1-year extension to April 2nd, 2026. The process is a recommendation from the Planning Commission that is then delivered to the board for that extension. So staff doesn't see any actual probably reasons that this can't be considered for extension. These are all extenuating circumstances that are outside of the developer's control and were conditions of approval for the original sketch plan. So they must be addressed in order to be heard for preliminary. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, but looking for a motion for the recommendation from the Planning Commission to the board.
Any questions from planning commission or commissioners?
No.
I'll entertain a motion.
I don't wanna take all.
All right, I'll move to extend,
I
is it a
second.
1-year extension?
I second.
Great, all in favor? Aye.
I,
Now we'll move into file 24-03, which is the Box Creek gravel mining conditional use permit. Have to read a opening statement here. The Lake County Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners will now conduct a joint public hearing. This statement I am reading shall be incorporated into and made part of the record on these proceedings. The Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners have jurisdiction to conduct a joint public hearing on a conditional use permit application under sections 3.6.1 of the Lake County Land Development Code. The purpose of this hearing is to consider whether the conditional use permit application should be approved. In considering that matter, the Commission will address the approval criteria that's set forth in section 3.6.1.f of the Lake County Land Development Code. The procedure this evening will be as followed. Number 1, members of the Commission and the Board will disclose if they've had any ex parte communications. 2, county staff will make their initial presentation. 3, the applicant may then make their presentation. 4, after that, any persons either supporting or opposing the application may present evidence. Such presentations shall be limited to 2 minutes each. 5, supporting and opposing witnesses may be questioned by the Commission and the Board. Once questioning is concluded, no further questioning is permitted unless granted by chair. 6, the applicant may then present any rebuttal evidence. The parties and witnesses are asked not to submit redundant, irrelevant, or cumulative evidence. If someone has already made the point that you wish to make, please simply say so. The chair will also require that all comments be made to the Planning Commission and the Board, and that there be no dialogue in between applicant and members of the audience. At the conclusion of the evidentiary portion of the hearing, the chair will entertain a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, and the Commission will discuss and weigh the evidence. Then there will be a motion to close the discussion phase of the joint public hearing. The Board of County Commissioners will then retire from the meeting, and the chair of the Planning Commission will entertain a motion on the application. The motion may take the form of one of the following recommendations. 1, approve the application with no conditions. 2, approve the application with recommended conditions. 3, approve the application with newly identified conditions. Or 4, deny the application. The planning director shall make a record of any substantial discussion on the motion and include that in the record with the recommendation of the Commission. The Commission's recommendation will be in the form of a statement of motion. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the Commission or to the form or substance of these proceedings? Okay, hearing none, I will now ask that each Planning Commission member and then each County Commissioner, if you've had any ex parte communications, and to disclose them now. Steve Stevens. Take yourself.
No issues here.
Dave Clark Farrell,
None.
okay, Jason Murphy,
None.
David Yurt,
None.
Heather Lynn Nunn, Commissioner Tharp.
I had a phone call, somebody called me and texted me today asking to give comment, and I directed them to community planning and development and explained how public hearings work. So, that's what happened.
Commissioner Lee,
None.
Commissioner Bullock.
None.
From here, we will allow staff to make their presentation.
Wonderful, and I just wanted to mention that staff has copies of the approval criteria for the application tonight for the public. So if you want to raise your hand if anybody wants to have a copy of the approval criteria. Tonight's hearing, I may not have one for everyone, so you may have to share it with your neighbor. But I'm happy to hand out just anyone that would like one as long as my supplies. Anyone else? Actually, I've got plenty of books left to do. Once I'm in, it's sitting out. Absolutely. Here's another one. This one for me. Anita?
I took a picture of it, so.
Awesome. Anyone else like to have? I've got 2 left.
Question,
Sure.
is the document that's being passed out be posted somewhere where we that are on Zoom call can review the document?
Yes, that is located in section. You would need to go online to the website, the county's website, and view that, and we could probably put a link to it in the chat as well. The approval criteria are outlined in section 3.6.1.f of the Lake County Land Development Code. But we'll go ahead and see if we can grab it and put a link in there.
Development code on the left. The approval criteria are the criteria that this application gets measured against. So that's why Ann passed it out and why it's important in this conversation.
And it will also be part of Melissa's presentation in the slide deck this evening too, so you will see it up on the screen if you're online. There will be slides within staff's presentation regarding this as well, that you'll be able to view online.
Alright, so staff has the.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for coming. We were kind of expecting all of you. We tried to accommodate with the courtroom upstairs, but it was under renovation, so we get to be cozy in here tonight. And so we're gonna go a little bit out of order. I was not listening closely to the script, which I should have been, but what we would like to do is have the applicant start. Katie Todd is representing Titan. And we are doing it in this order tonight because this is a very technical type of application in terms of mining activity. So it's not something that, maybe some of you deal with on a daily basis, but most of us do not. And so I think a number of questions will get answered in the process of their presentation. So I'm gonna have Katie start. And then I will follow up with talking about the criteria for approval and how this application has been reviewed. So if that works for you, Katie?
I'll introduce myself, Katie Tote of Lewicky & Associates, here on behalf of Titan Gold. Also have Ben Miller in my office. We're gonna actually be presenting together. So you guys okay if I sit on the floor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry that you're sitting on the floor, but.
No, it's okay. All right, so our location is shown on the map on the right. The magenta line, also, am I permitted to point to the screen?
Yes.
Everybody on Zoom, I'm sorry, you won't see this. The permit boundary is the magenta line. The red line is the leased boundary. So we're 8.5 miles south by southwest of Leadville, 1.5 miles north of Twin Lakes. The site is currently permitted under DRMS, under the DRMS and under Lake County to mine placer gold. The DRMS permit already includes language to mine and export gravel. So we are here today to seek approval to export gravel as part of a conditional use in Lake County. The land of the site is solely privately owned by the Colorado State Land Board and the City of Aurora. And then really important to note, we have no changes to the 2019 approval of CUP 1853 for the gold mining operation. So there will be no changes to that permit as part of the proceedings tonight. Next slide, please.
That's me, Katie, so just, let me know.
Okay, thank you. Some key points about the site history. I'm not gonna read all of these for you guys, but it was originally mined by the Dairy Dredge. That's the image on the top right. That operated from 1915 to 1924. It moved throughout the site, moved from Korsky to Box Creek. This was the most profitable dredge in North America at this time. I believe that still stands. And kind of jumping forward into more recent history, this site was originally leased or it was purchased by the City of Aurora. We'll get to that on our next slide. It was then leased to Cathedral Mining in 2015. And then through an open competitive bidding process, Titan Gold was awarded the lease in 2018 and re-permitted with the DRMS in Lake County. Both of those permits were approved in 2019. And after 70 years of failed operators, Titan Gold has started mining in 2019 and has been pretty successful in gathering the resource and then reclaiming the land that will eventually become the City of Aurora's Box Creek Reservoir. So we were alerted on Friday that Lake County staff is planning to bring up a zoning issue. So this is pretty new to us. It's our understanding that there's some discrepancies on what zoning was, what it was intended to be, and then how it is interpreted today. So back to some site history. In 1998, Hayden Ranch was sold to the City of Aurora. In 2002, City of Aurora purchased Hallenbeck Ranches. And then they were originally zoned as rural. So the map that you see on the right side of the screen is what was downloadable from Lake County's website in 2023. Now, if you look at the zoning map in 2024, which is here in this room, all of these parcels that were zoned as agricultural forestry are now zoned as rural. So this zoning change occurred in 2024 without noticing the City of Aurora, without noticing Titan Gold. And there's some allegations that this changes what uses are allowed in these zonings. So, you know, under this new rural zoning, maybe gold mining, of which we're talking about placer mining, not in situ digging into the mountain gold mining, that those things would be considered non-conforming uses. However, gravel mining, the basis of why we are here today, applies to both zonings. And then, yeah, at no point during this 10-month period of working with Lake County staff were we alerted that there was this zoning discrepancy. Ben, do you have anything to add?
No, just that, the understanding of what placer mining is important. So placer mining is essentially gravel mining, and you're separating out the gravel parts just like you would in a normal gravel pit. And then there's a very small fraction, right, like fractions of an ounce per ton of gravel, which is gold, and that's collected at.
Could you
at
please
very-
speak
Sorry.
speak up, please?
Yes, placer mining is fundamentally gravel mining. As you can see, if you drive up to the site, you're digging in gravel. It gets separated the same way through streams and water into different size fractions. And then a portion of the size fraction, which is the smallest fraction, goes through one last step, which is a sluice box, and that separates on gravity. And so that is the only additional piece that happens that's difference between gravel and gold. And so, in fact, most gravel pits within Colorado have a gold collection circuit on them. So the gravel pits in Silverthorne has a gold collection circuit. And in fact, even all the way down the Platte River out towards Greeley, you still have gold collection circuits within the gravel plants throughout the state. And so I think the furthest west that I've seen them all the way out in Gypsum, collecting gold that would have been from the Minturn deposits. And so gold collection as a part of gravel mining is fundamental to Colorado. And in fact, if you look at the lease packages issued by the State Land Board, and then Aurora used the same lease form as the land board, those are gravel and alluvial mineral lease forms. And so alluvial is the word for gravel, is the fancy geology word for gravel.
So we're bringing this up because we feel that this is not, that Titan Gold is not responsible for Lake County's past errors in zoning. This discussion of zoning the parcel has nothing to do with the bearing of this CUP that Titan Gold is applying for. And it's strictly an issue between the city of Aurora and Lake County. So we don't even feel it's appropriate to speak about here. But because we know that staff will speak about it, we wanted to address it ourselves. Thank you, Cece. All right, so this is the current conditions prior to the start of mining. So this would have been the beginning of 2018. It's a schematic of Titan's operations. We just want to kind of highlight what we're looking at here. There's a historical component of mining. That's what you see, these really big dredge piles of gravel that's kind of arced back and forth. On this map, that's represented as tan. We have Box Creek running through the north part of the site. Korsky Creek runs along the south part of the site. And as Ben was just describing, Placer Gold follows where creeks moved. So those are kind of the areas that Titan Gold is targeting. Now we're gonna also talk about the WOTUS and the wetlands. So there's a lot of exceptions to those areas. And then last thing to point out is this little red outline, which is a historical structure boundary, sorry.
No, you're good.
That is authorized by the State Historic Preservation Office, and that's another exclusionary area to mining.
So it's
Those are
gonna,
the-
so it's gonna stay.
It's gonna stay until the city of Aurora decides to make a reservoir.
And those are the historic buildings that you can see
Yeah.
that are melting into the ground.
So now, this aerial image is from 2023, so 2 years ago. I'm sorry that it's not a little more blown in, but it's the exact same scale as the previous image. So you can see where historical dredge piles would have moved through. The blue ponds are jurisdictional waters of the US associated with Box Creek. There are also ponds kind of in those historical dredge piles. Is it okay if I'm kind of standing in front of the camera?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Can you point out County Road 10?
County Road 10 is
The
right
pink
here.
Pink line?
It's the kind of tan road
No.
line.
10, okay.
10 runs here.
No,
20
that's 24.
That's 24.
24, oh, I'm sorry, okay.
10 runs.
24A is up here. 10 is on the east side behind the Zoom window.
And then 24 goes straight south.
This
No,
one?
there you go.
10 goes straight.
10 goes
Sorry,
straight.
10 goes
10
straight.
goes straight. So you'll notice there's a series of different colored outlines associated with these various water bodies. Those are all the buffers that Titan Gold has to stay out of. Some of them are 10, 15, 25, and 50-foot buffers. We'll talk about that when we get to our wetlands slide. And then another thing that we really want to reiterate is that they're allowed to have a certain amount of acreage open to active mining, acreage open in advance of mining, acreage open in active reclamation, and then they're allowed to have a lot more acres open in reclamation. So this is after the land has been filled back in, graded, topsoiled, and seeded. It takes 3 to 7 years in this area for seeding to reach the amount of rigor that the division is gonna consider it's reclaimed. So these whole areas have already been reclaimed. These areas are reclaimed. These areas are reclaimed as of 2025. All of these areas you can see are more in that sort of like active reclamation phase. And then they were mining over in this area. Next slide. Okay, so a little more on that State Historic Preservation Office boundary, boundary. So image on the top right are those dairy structures. It's a less than 10-acre area. Titan commits to staying 100 feet off of that area. And then it will be City of Aurora's discussion with the SHPO to do something about it when they're ready to do something more with the site. Next slide, please.
Wait, could you go back? There's one other condition that SHPO has on, and
yeah.
it's that the historic dredge piles, if there's disturbance to the historic dredge piles by the current operator, they have to be put back to historic dredge piles. So there are some areas that you can see were disturbed that are back to being cobble. That's at the requirement of SHPO to maintain the character of the surrounding landscape to the historic building. And so typically they've tried to just stay clear of them, but if there has to be a road put through, the road will go through and then they'll pile cobble back into where the road was when they go away from that area. And that's a condition of the, in the state mining permit through the state office.
Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about the 2018 CUP that was approved in 2019. That's the last time I'll say it, we'll just refer to it as the 2018. They had multiple mining targets, that still stands. Average production is from March to November, duration of 10 to 25 years with 300 total acres disturbed. Please remember the site is 950 acres. And then here we talk again about that less than 40 acres out of reclamation at any given time. So when they start mining in an area, they're going to remove the topsoil and overburden of the area of a 10-acre area in advance of where they're mining. Then they have the area where they're actually mining, where they're removing gravel and moving that into their processing equipment. That processing area is also 10 acres. That's where you see their equipment here, which I'll describe in just a moment. And then they have 10 acres that's going back into active reclamation. That processing area also includes settling ponds. So as they remove the gravel out of the ground, groundwater is very shallow here. So water rushes in, the gravel comes out wet. They move it over to their processing area. On the kind of right side of this image, you can see a dump truck that's tipping material back. The excavator picks up the material, dumps it onto the grizzly where the bigger fraction falls out. Smaller material falls through the grizzly and then enters the trommel, which is that tube you see. The tube is spinning and there's screens inside of it. So as that material moves, cobble kind of comes out the other end of the tube and the small size fraction that is gold bearing enters those mats. That's the sluice box that Ben was mentioning, and that's where you see water kind of coming down. And that's how they're harvesting the gold. Then this new CUP 2403 will also take that gravel, process it further for construction materials. Next slide, please. So here's a image of what that miner's moss looks like. It's kind of like a velvet or like a ski climbing skin where it kind of moves in one direction. And the heavy minerals, such as gold or lead, settles out into that moss. And then Titan folds up that mat at the end of the day, takes it to their office where they do their final processing, which is all done with gravity and water separation. So there are no chemicals used at any point of their gold extraction operation. The equipment that they use for gold or gravel operating is excavators, trucks, dozers, loaders. Processing equipment includes trommels, sluice, wash plants, and conveyors. The additional equipment required to process gold will be a portable crushing and screening plant.
Gravel.
Sorry, to process gravel. And yep, that's it. Process gravel, any excess processed gravel gets put right back into the site as reclamation. Next slide, please. So this is an example of what one of those portable crushing and screening plants is gonna look like. This is the bottom left image on the screen. I'm not saying Titans is gonna look exactly like this, but pretty similar, where you put the gravel in, it's crushed, and then it gets screened into different size fractions. So There will be a plant, and then there will be different sizes of material near that plant. And those sizes will be determined by the job at hand. So some jobs may require a larger fraction, some jobs may require more sand. But the big, I guess, limit to their gravel mining is 300,000 tons annually is the maximum that would be produced from the site.
One note is the reason there's a necessity to crush in the beginning is that many of the specification materials for building roads or anything require fractured surfaces. So if we just screened it all round rocks, then it would make terrible roads. And so you need to break the rocks up to make them angular to meet CDOT specifications. And then the county would only use a CDOT specification gravel for the county roads when they use it. So it must be most of the products must be crushed in order to meet the specification. Then obviously some materials can just be screened, and that would be like landscaping rocks. But a majority of what a community consumes is going to be a crushed type of gravel that's used to make roads.
So like a practical example of what Ben's describing is you guys have all walked on a concrete sidewalk where it looks like a pebble has like kind of popped out of the concrete and there's this little depression left. That's what the CDOT is trying to avoid. It's this concept called spalling.
Yep.
Reclamation occurs concurrently with mining. Reclaimed areas can take years to reach reclamation. So in their site, they're backfilling, grading, putting overburden down, placing 4 inches of topsoil that they have saved from the areas in advance of mining, and they're revegetating with native and drought-tolerant species. These species are approved by the DRMS, and there's been consultation with CPW to make sure that these are the plants that are appropriate for the area and for the wildlife.
Add one piece on reclamation.
Yeah.
So you may cover it on another slide.
Sure.
So reclamation is an activity the mining company undertakes. The state Division of Reclamation, Mining and Safety determines if it's successful. And so when you go to have an area released by the state will have an inspection and it must meet the criteria of the state. And then prior to that being released, there's going to be a process that looks very similar to a mine application, where a notice is given to the Board of County Commissioners, the NRCS office, and a few other locations. And then there is essentially a permit process which is undertaken to release the area from reclamation liability. And so none of the reclamation is just deemed reclaimed. It actually goes through a process with the state where the state feels comfortable that it is reclaimed in their eyes as the technical folks. But then there's a process which involves the Board of County Commissioners again to release that area from reclamation liability. And so none of the areas on site have been released from reclamation liability. They still require weed maintenance, potential top seeding or overseeding in areas that need additional revegetation. And so it's expected on this site that process of weed maintenance, revegetation will occur until the state deems it reclaimed enough that then they enter into the process through the government, both state and local government, to release that area from reclamation. And so that's just to get understanding that it isn't a random person that picks when something's reclaimed. It's a process through the state and through the county to release it from reclamation liability. So, sorry.
All right, so here's the process that Titan uses. They'll take data to determine which areas need what level of grading. Step 2, they'll use heavy equipment to grade and level out the ground, put overburden down, put topsoil down to 4 inches, which is what their state permit details. Then they use heavy equipment to seed the ground. We jump down to the bottom left, step 4. In an ideal scenario, the first year of growing looks really robust. For Titan, it's taking 3 or more years to feel really confident about that seeding, and that's because of the forage pressure from the animals in the area. You can imagine that like fresh, tender, new seed and new growth is like really delicious for the elk and the deer. And then the big burden on releasing that reclamation is there enough vegetation that does not include weeds that has stabilized the erosion potential of the slope. So annual snowmelt storm events are not gonna erode away this topsoil that was just placed down. Next slide. All right, so safety and compliance, they are, the Box Creek Placer is governed by MSHA, the DRMS, which is the Division of Reclamation, Mining and Safety, DWR, the Division of Water Resources, CDPHE, all of which monitor the site on a regular basis to ensure compliance. They keep all of their equipment, lubricants, fuels, anything needed to keep their equipment running in secondary containment. Gates are locked when not in use, and there's an engineered SPCC and swamp in place. An SPCC is a spill prevention controls and countermeasure plan. The swamp is a stormwater management plan. Both of these are designed to ensure that if a mistake were to happen, that the environment is protected. They outline the steps that Titan has to take in noticing different agencies, noticing the community, and is really their safeguard on keeping the environment safe and as little impacted as possible by mining. And this is something that everybody who operates on the site is fully trained on.
Engineered means that one of our licensed engineers has stamped those documents, and so we carry the burden of that document. And then included in that is regular inspections. So SPCC plans get monthly inspections for most everything, and then they get annual and semi-annual inspections for things like tanks. And so we would undertake as the engineers the tank inspections. The containment inspections we'll also do on our sort of regular visits to ensure that any secondary containment is on there. So there is a Colorado engineer in charge of both of those plans and maintaining and inspecting those plans.
All right, so we've addressed some things that we know the community is most concerned about. So one of these is noise. Ben, I'll let you take the lead on this one.
So the state is tasked with the primary enforcement of noise regulations, meaning that they set the threshold. And so the state's threshold is set at 80 decibels. Lake County, and counties are allowed to do this, to the property line. Lake County, and as are all counties in the state, can enact stricter regulation than the state. And so Lake County has a stricter regulation than the state. Decibels are a little bit hard sometimes to wrap your head around what the number means. So the difference between 80 and 70 decibels is 10 times. So it's not that it's a little bit smaller, it's 10 times smaller. So a decibel system is on a logarithmic system. So it's the same way that you measure earthquakes, that a 5 earthquake is 10 times bigger than a 4 earthquake. And so sound decibels are the same. So Lake County already has in force a sound ordinance which is 1/10 of the state's limits. These are some other ones to place in context what that noise limit is. So MSHA requires hearing protection at 85 decibels, meaning that you have to have either earplugs, muffs, or a combination of both if you're around that sort of noise. Other typical noise levels people would experience, sort of at that 70 limit is like a washing machine or a dishwasher is what would be allowed. And so the limits are quite strict. And the thing that's also hard is that while you can potentially hear a noise, it's not necessarily out of compliance. And so that's often a very hard piece to understand. But the site has maintained regulation within that 70 decibel range. They have received some noise complaints, and the noise complaints that they've received, they've attempted to change the orientation of equipment or change the location of activities to reduce the impacts to the neighbors. And I don't know if, Chris, you have anything more to add to that?
We are moving that current plant that you're hearing in about a month. And it's gonna go probably another half mile northwest.
Alright, Suzie. Alright, wildlife. This photo showing a bunch of elk on the site was taken on Friday, I believe. So when first getting the permits in 2019, CPW provided comment, I believe they provided comment again on this CUP 2403. They asked that because there is severe winter range in the area, that they limit activity outside of the December 1st to April 1st range. The permit boundary and Titan Gold has been able to fulfill that. Permit boundaries is 950 acres, but only 300 is preserved at any given time. This allows for the majority of the site to remain undisturbed and preserved as natural habitat. There's maintenance of the WOTUS, so that's the waters of the United States, and wetland buffers, which we'll talk about in a few more slides. And we've proposed hauling hours to be limited to 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and 8 to 12 p.m. on Saturdays to mitigate diurnal and nocturnal species impacts. And then all of the seeded areas in reclamation results in an extended reclamation area or time frame from the forage pressure.
On the forage pressure, we have had sites reclaimed in the state where we had to do different things to keep the elk off of the reclamation areas, to at least get seed to grow in. We don't feel that that's pressure right now, but that is a known problem with reclamation, is that you end up putting in very good forage, and so sometimes you struggle with it over the long term. We particularly have experience with, this would have been a long time ago, reclaiming some of the small coal mines around the state. That often was the issue, that we had so much elk overgrazing that we had to do things to remedy it. We don't believe that's gonna occur here because we have so much area. But it is just something to know in reclamation, that often the reclamation pressure of wildlife is high, and it makes it harder to get bond release.
Okay, so for the water on the site, there are wetlands. The entire site is outside of the 100-year Arkansas River floodplain. The site includes Box and Korsky Creeks. The Army Corps of Engineers, or a USACE, permit is not required because there is no activity within the floodplain or jurisdictional waters of the US. So the city of Aurora pursued a preliminary jurisdictional determination with the Army Corps, and that jurisdictional determination determined that there were 4 sort of areas of concern: ephemeral waters, intermittent waters, perennial, and wetlands. And all of those areas are protected by their appropriate associated buffer. And again, those buffers were dictated by the Army Corps. So Titan Gold does not mine or enter any of those areas. One of those slides at the very beginning of our presentation, I talked about those different color-coded buffers. That's what we're talking about here.
I think one procedural thing, I didn't announce who I was, so just for the record, Dr. Benjamin Miller, I'm one of the co-owners of Wilkie and Associates, just so I say my whole name.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I didn't know if I didn't, procedurally, sometimes you forget, and then it makes trouble for the record to go in,
Later on,
I'm
sure.
sorry. So the one note on the wetlands is that we probably have all seen it in the news that the rules around wetlands change, and it's called the Sackett Rule. We are maintaining pre-Sackett Rule, which is much more prescriptive in the interpretation of wetlands. And so this would have been Biden's set of rules at the time.
I think it was Obama's set.
Obama's set of rules
Yeah.
when this was determined. So we're operating under a much older set of wetland rules than what is currently available. But there's no intent on our part to change any of that, but just, we're not operating under the less prescriptive rules that a lot of places are now. We're staying with this determination at that set of rules.
Okay, so additional notes on water for the site. No on-site water will leave the site via intentional or accidental discharges, outfall, or pumping, so no discharge permit with CDPHE is required. There is a gravel well permit in place, and there's a substitute water supply plan in place. There have been various throughout the life of the mine, and an augmentation plan is in process. So this is permanent accounting for out of priority water consumption. Water is leased from the city of Pueblo. It's 37 acre feet a year, and that accounts for all of their consumed uses of water, which is water lost on gravel export as part of this substitute water, or as part of this CUP. Additional uses or consumptive uses of water is for dust mitigation, so this is watering the roads so that equipment doesn't kick up dust on the roads. Processing equipment evaporation, so as the trommel and the gravel processing equipment runs, the water that's evaporating off of the material and off of that equipment is accounted for. The exposed groundwater, so any of the ponds that are associated with Titan Gold's operation, that surface of the pond is subject to evaporation, that's accounted for. And then at the very beginning of the year or at the beginning of a mining area, when they first start digging out new material, that groundwater rushes in. So that first fill of the pond is also accounted for. Their stormwater management plan is in place to ensure that no stormwater or processed water is permitted to exit the disturbed areas of the site, which would move sediment off of the site. So everything is really buttoned up and tight to minimize the impact to surrounding areas and areas that are sensitive within the site itself. Next slide. Titan does a really good job of recycling as much water as possible. So this image shows one of their settling ponds with a pump in the bottom right-hand corner. So as they use water through their processing equipment, it flows into a pond, and then the other side of the pond is where they're pumping water back out. So they're constantly reusing the same water over and over. We kind of touched on this already, but wanted to reiterate that all of their fuel tanks are in secondary containment that's capable of holding 110% of that tank's contents. There's no harmful chemicals used at all during mining, and while they are permitted to use flocculant to help with sediment settling in those ponds, they don't use it, they haven't needed to. There's a site-wide spill prevention control and countermeasures plan in place, the site-wide stormwater management plan, I've talked about both of those. Topsoil is stockpiled for reclamation, and then processed construction materials will be stockpiled by finished size. Dust mitigation. So there really isn't that much dust generated from the site because everything is mined and processed wet. So when the gravel comes out of the ground, it's wet. When it's transported to the equipment, it's wet. And then the biggest issue of dust is on the roadways. However, Titan does a really good job of wetting those roads down, especially in kind of high wind, dry conditions. And part of that water usage that I just discussed with the consumed water is we've also included calculations for the gravel that's leaving the site. So by the time the gravel's processed through all of the equipment to begin its entry into the construction materials market, it still is wet. And then it will be leaving the site in covered haul trucks. Next slide. Visual impacts, they're pretty limited and some of them are historic. This is continued placer mining and movement of gravel in conformance with historic uses, less than 40 acres of active disturbance at any given time. Reclamation is happening concurrently with mining. The active mining kind of occurs below the roadways, and if you're driving on Highway 24, it's really difficult to see active mining areas in this site. It's a pretty small operation with less than 10 pieces of equipment, and they really have stuck to using roads that are already in place at the site as opposed to making a bunch of new roads. All right, so impacts to the surrounding area. The magenta line, again, is the permit boundary, that's the 950 acres. The red line is the leased boundary so all the land that is included in their lease with the City of Aurora and the Colorado State Land Board. So we have a cross section on the bottom half of this image with various colored bars. The red line corresponds to the red lease boundary. This cross section follows this white line here. The magenta boundary is the permit boundary. The yellow boundary is basically where the majority of their mining is occurring across this transect. And then we have 3 red or black boxes on the right side of the cross section that are reflected as 3 white boxes that occur within the Pan Arc subdivision. So the point of this image is to detail that, like, when standing in Pan Arc, your visual impact is pretty narrow. Part of that is the trees are in the way, and then looking down into the basin, you're gonna see the north side of the site, that south-facing slope, before you see kind of like the guts of the operation, what's really happening. Next slide. We chose to include impacts to Twin Lakes. We have an understanding that there are some people from that area in the audience tonight. So we're gonna talk about the area to the west, 2 miles to the southwest, Twin Lakes proper, area to the southeast. And next slide, please. So impacts to Twin Lakes proper, we again have a cross-section line that begins in the middle of the site, moves to Twin Lakes. So the left side of the cross-section is the north side of the site, the right side of the cross-section is the south side in Twin Lakes. So what we're trying to show here is that there's an entire landform in the way between the Box Creek Placer and Twin Lakes proper. So limited impact because that landform provides a really good buffer to what's going on at Box Creek. Next slide, please. Similar thing going on the east. There's another landform. This is some of the glacial slump that's providing that big buffer between the eastern side of Twin Lake. Next slide. All right, hauling. This is one of the biggest changes from the 2019 permit to what we're proposing here with the 2024. So the haul trucks will leave the site, enter County Road 24A, enter County Road 10, and then enter State Highway 24. We did a traffic study that some of the parameters of the traffic study was assuming is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Duration of hauling, where 75% of the trips would probably go north, 25% of the trips would go south. Now, because we're entering a state highway, a CDOT access permit is required. We've also discussed with Lake County Road and Bridge a road impact fee, as well as a road maintenance agreement, all of which we're going to talk about in the following slides. But we just want everybody to understand the route that we're talking about here, as depicted by this red line. So the CDOT access permit, Ben, I'm gonna let you lead this one. If you could describe the photos on the right, that'd be great.
Yeah.
First.
So the photos on the right are the intersection with the highway. And it's, the red line shows the required deceleration lane that came from the access permit, and the yellow line is the current unmarked deceleration lane where you pull onto the shoulder. Just so you're looking at the picture, but the important thing to.
The little man.
Oh, yes, and the little man is looking about where that photo above it is looking to the north, so you can kind of see it. Although most of you probably know the intersection well, we just wanted to make sure that it was on the record for everyone to see. The CDOT access permit was awarded to Titan on behalf of Lake County on February 5th of this year. It has an assigned number. The traffic volume traffic design volume is 96 passenger equivalent movements per hour. The way that access permits are engineered and developed is you look at the current traffic flow going through that intersection using those monitoring devices, the little line that runs across the road. And then you calculate the impact of adding additional traffic. And the reason that window of 6 to 6 is on the traffic impact study is to understand if there's any time within those windows which is most impacted by traffic coming onto that road. It isn't that CDOT allows us 6 to 6, that's the window of study. So that in case there was a lot of traffic at 6 a.m. for some reason, we would be held to the traffic impacts at that the peak flow. What you're trying to find is the peak amount of traffic in the intersection, and then that's what the design hourly volume means. And so in the case of this road, it's going to be mid-morning or early, somewhere between early to mid-morning when people go to work. And so the tightest constraint on traffic is that number, and that's what comes out of it. So design hourly volume is passenger car equivalents, so that's like your sedan. In the case of limits for dump trucks count as 3. So 3 passenger car equivalents is 1 dump truck. The other thing to remember in this design hourly volume is that's both in and out. And so you have to account for things coming in and things going out, both cars and dump trucks. And that includes operators at the site as well as the background traffic of the users of that road, so people coming from the subdivision.
So one of the biggest impacts of the CDOT access permit is that Titan Gold is required to expand that deceleration lane southbound. So the image on the right, the yellow line, is about what's there today as a deceleration lane. The red represents what Titan Gold will have to improve. So there's going to be a much longer and wider deceleration lane off the state highway onto the county road, solely financed by Titan Gold. This will include a traffic control plan, it accommodates pedestrian uses, there will be increased safety signage, all associated with this major traffic intersection improvement. Next slide. The county road maintenance agreement. So this includes a road impact fee, which is, right now we're talking about 50 cents a ton to Lake County for use to improve and maintain County Road 10 as well as County Road 24A. This fee will be paid by Titan Gold to a fund created in Lake County's Road and Bridge Department. Lake County Road and Bridge is going to use this fee to complete maintenance and repairs on County Road 10. And then Titan Gold, separate of that fee, will make maintenance and repairs on County Road 24A. These include seasonal blading, water and dust suppression, crushed road base installation, maintenance or installation of drainage structures, and winter maintenance such as snow plowing when Titan is operating. So Titan's going to maintain 24A as a smaller stretch of the road, and it's one of the areas that they're going to impact the most with their trucks coming in and out. Because County Road 10 is bigger and is more used by the community, it needs to be County Road and Bridge's responsibility to do that maintenance and repair. But Titan Gold is going to provide the money to do so. Next slide. So this gets to the road impact fee. This road impact fee, we're talking again about 50 cents a ton. It's going to Public Works. The image on the right shows 24A, which is an unpaved road. 10 runs on the right side of the image and is paved. Primarily, this fee is going to allow Lake County Road and Bridge to complete the maintenance and repairs on County Road 10. Anything in excess of what they need to make those repairs is going to be used by Lake County Public Works for improvements on other county roads. There will be biannual county road inspections, quarterly reports by Titan Gold. And the biggest limitation to this funding is that all funds must remain within Lake County and administered by Lake County's Public Works Department. Next slide. So an example of this road impact fee. We've said that Titan plans to produce and export 300,000 tons. So at 50 cents a ton, that's $150,000 going towards this road and bridge maintenance fund. And then the county is going to be able to use that to make improvements in maintenance to County Road 10, and then anything excess will be used on county roads without increasing taxes on the community. There will be the safety benefits to the intersection of County Road 10 and Highway 24. And then we also wanted to note the 2023 taxes that Titan paid. They're paying $155,000 in taxes, and then there's a severance tax that the state of Colorado sees, but wanted to include it here for y'all. Bonding, so according to Colorado revised statute, only the DRMS, so this is held by the state treasury, is allowed to hold a bond for the site. That bond has been in place since 2019 when the permit is awarded, and it will only be released at the end of final reclamation. Ben already detailed that release of reclamation liability happens after public comment, approvals by state and local authorities. So we'll more or less be back here in front of you and in front of P&Z and the commissioners to get that bond released before Titan can walk away from the site. Other permits that are required is the DRMS permit, which is in place, the Lake County CUP, so the 2018 permit's in place, 2024 is why we're here today. An APEN is required with CDPHE. That's an air pollution emission notice. This is what allows their equipment to run on diesel, and it captures the dust that may be generated at the site. But as we detailed, there's really not that much coming out of the site. Division of Water Resources, there's a gravel well in place. Also with the Division of Water Resources, the substitute water supply plan. Augmentation plan is in process with Colorado Water Court right now. There's a spill prevention control and countermeasure plan, stormwater management plan. No Army Corps permit is required. However, Titan is keeping those stricter wetland and WOTUS rules. And then no discharge permit is required. Next slide. We were asked to comment on the current conditions of approval for the 2018 permit. So we'll kind of go through them pretty quickly here. Number one, have a substitute water supply plan in place. That's current. SPCC in place. Consultation with Lake County's Office of Emergency Management. Plan is in place, filed with Lake County. We understand that for the 2024 permit, they want to have a slightly different procedure, and we'll absolutely follow that. There's a CDPHE APEN in place, and again, changes from gravel export may require that be changed. That would happen prior to the beginning of exporting gravel. The Army Corps of Engineers, the preliminary jurisdictional determination is in place, no mining in the WOTUS or wetland buffers. The Bureau of Reclamation has a pipeline that runs through the site. An agreement is in place and current with them to protect that pipeline. We agree that all the conditions of approval are binding, statements therein. There was a condition for a MIWA monitoring well to be constructed when mining is within 1,000 feet of said MIWA well. They haven't even reached within 1,500 feet of that well, but if they were to progress within that 1,000-foot buffer, then a monitoring well will be constructed and the full language of this condition approval 8 will go into effect. And then a complaint procedure. Titan has a complaint procedure in place. If people call the number on the signs around their site, they cure those complaints as soon as possible. Chris already mentioned they're moving the plant pretty soon. I know they've done that in the past when people have felt like there was too much of a noise impact. And Titan is they can only do something about the complaints that they hear about. So if people are complaining to the county, we need the county to tell Titan, and then Titan can make that change, or try to figure out what that complaint is. But this complaint procedure is only as useful as people following that procedure. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about some conditions of approval for this 2024 permit. And the only one that we really want to keep talking about is condition of approval 8, which details haul truck hours of operation shall be from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, 8 to 12 on Saturday. During community events that close Harrison Avenue, the City of Leadville portion of the truck route will be closed. So we'd like to propose additional language that provides an exception for government-funded jobs or provides a process for Titan Gold to notice or request special approval for different hours of haulage with the commissioners to make sure that they are still competitive for these government-sponsored contracts. And then we just want to note that this proposed condition of approval 8 does not preclude haul trucks from operating out of the Box Creek Placer when Harrison Avenue is closed. And we just want everybody to understand that when Harrison Avenue is closed for community events, haul trucks will follow the approved detour route that all other State Highway 24 traffic is instructed to follow. So they'll do what everybody else is doing.
As just a clarification on government-funded jobs, a good example would be like a paving job of the state highway or a county road job. Because often within those contract bids, you would have like hours that deliveries have to be delivered to CDOT, for instance. And so we would just ask for the ability to supply those government-funded contracts, so that site's useful for public improvement. So only for public works would we go outside of those approved hours.
All right, and that concludes our presentation. So thank you, everybody, for bearing with us.
Can we ask a question?
I think that staff goes first and then.
Yeah, and then I'll start questions when it's that time. We'll go in an orderly way. But yeah, and Melissa, if you can, this was a super great presentation, and I think it explains what they're currently doing. I think there may still be a lot of gray as to what we're here tonight to approve versus what's already happening, so if you can just
Great.
make sure you're adding some clarity there, that would be helpful.
Very good.
Thanks.
All right. I know everybody's been sitting for a while and you're warm, so I will try to keep this shorter, but also to the point, so if you would, Cece. So the proposal is for the processing of the aggregate material. As they have pointed out, the gold mining is the operation that's underway. And so they, through the state permit, they actually went through a technical revision to that permit to be approved for, through the state, to be approved for the processing of this aggregate material. So this CUP is really very focused on that component of this. So as it was pointed out, it involves crushing, screening, washing of the materials, the export of those materials, and they talked about the tonnage, that 300,000 tons that will leave the site annually, is what they're estimating. They did a good job at describing the haul routes. That's really probably where the impact is gonna be felt the most. And again, the mining operates, it's seasonal, and I know many of you live in the area, so you know this really well, but it's approximately from April through November. So that's about 8 months out of each year. And so the idea is that the aggregate material processing follows the same schedule as the gold mining operations. So the hours of operation currently are the 6 AM to 7 PM, Monday through Saturday. And so we'll talk more about that because there's been some agreement on making modifications to that. So the next slide, please. So the really key issues, I think I'm trying to hit on these and they become conditions of approval. The substitute water supply plan is a really important element of that. It was renewed for a third round in 2025. And that, as Katie pointed out, is pending. There's an application in Waterport for that augmentation water. So Lake County's water resource manager and the water attorney looked at that material on behalf of the county and had no outstanding concerns. I believe Bryce is present, Bryce Ehrlich he is our water resource manager, and he is available for questions if there are any. And these two issues have been added as conditions of approval. Next slide. The APN, they call it, which is the Air Pollutant Emissions Notice, was talked about previously. And they have made the statement that all APNs associated with the site are current, active, and in compliance. So if there are any changes required with the export of the gravel, they'll be required to update those or get new ones. So this requirement is also a condition of approval. And then we've talked about the access permits and agreements. So they did acquire an access permit. The traffic impact study talked about 55 trucks entering and leaving the site on a daily basis. The access permit is for a higher number than that because they project out to 2045. And so that's where we got that 96 number that was talked about earlier. Again, most of the traffic's going north, some of it will go south. And it's important to also, you know, we are gonna be living with this over the next 20 years, though that mix is gonna change. So one of the things that we did is add a condition of approval that was recommended by Titan and trying to really narrow this down and make sure that we have control over that over time, is that they'll require annual reporting of the tonnage and the truck volume to ensure compliance with that access permit. So Michael Irwin is here, our Public Works Director. He also is available for comments. He's reviewed this material. And so one of the things, you know, we were a little taken aback when CDOT said, I'm sorry, but we can't do further improvements to this intersection because it's not dangerous enough. And so Public Works came back with sort of this image that said, gosh, you know, we're gonna have these big trucks. I mean, people are traveling right now at high volumes, north and south. And so you've got this big haul truck, it's gonna be pulling off of County Road 10 to get onto US 24, that's gonna take them a little time. And so we see conflicts potentially in that intersection. However, it doesn't meet the actual, there's a dimensional requirement that CDOT has, and meets their and exceeds that linear distance. So there was no additional improvements that were required as part of the access permit, other than the right turn deceleration lane, which will certainly be an improvement for that location. So I say that because the county recognizes that this is gonna be a challenging and maybe sometimes dangerous intersection, and we don't have jurisdiction over it. So the best we can do is negotiate, and sometimes we don't get what we want. So with that, the next slide talks about the road maintenance agreement, and I think Katie did a nice job with that. This was an agreement that was brought to us. We don't have a road maintenance agreement as a county, but they had worked one similarly in Gunnison County. And so we started with that as a template, and I think she kind of went through what that means. So it is one of the conditions of approval that we get a fully executed road maintenance agreement, which will go a long ways towards taking care of County Road 10 in particular. So offsite impacts, we talked a bit about noise. I mean, many of you sent letters and emails and calls, and so the hours of operation, as we said, are pretty liberal in many ways, as well as that decibel level, and noise is a tricky thing. It doesn't travel in linear, it doesn't, it doesn't behave, right? It bounces around and it moves. And so what we did is suggest that we reduce the hours of operation to that 8 AM to 5, Monday through Friday, and 8 to 12 on Saturdays. And that's been agreed to as presented this afternoon. So I think that is a condition of approval. And what that doesn't mean is that the mining activity that's been previously approved still is at that 6 AM to 7 PM, Monday through Saturday. So this is for the haul route, in particular, the trucks entering and leaving the site. Well, that will be reduced. So, next slide, Parks and Wildlife, we did talk about this. One of the mitigating factors really is that the seasonal nature of this mining, right? So the migratory pattern of a lot of the animals, and they get a break in the winter. And so that doesn't change with the aggregate mining. Does a haul route add another dangerous element to crossing the road? It certainly does, but what we've seen a big increase in the number of cars on County Road 10, and the haul trucks will be part of that. So I said, is there a case to be made that we pull it back to May 1st to give a little tighter rein on that? And we haven't added that as a condition of approval, but it's a consideration. So I think that brings us to the existing 2018 CUP, which Katie did a good job running this through, so I had this slide in case I needed to use it, but I would say, and part of why I wanted them to do a pretty good background is, the approval of the 2018 CUP involved a board, different board, and a lot of different planning commission members, as well as some staff changes. So, in that has been lost some of the records that we need to look at, in particular, our emergency management plan. We're supposed to have a copy of that, we don't have a copy of that. So one of the conditions of approval is that all of these conditions are met. I think it gives us an opportunity to make sure that we have all the necessary documents that we should have as part of our records going forward. So with that, then we can go to and so an important section 5.2.5 is is part of our code that really addresses directly the extractive operations, which include mining. And we rely really heavily on the DRMS permit for that. And if you read the staff report or looked in the files, that information is there. It's required when they get that permit. It's verified through our review of the application. So most of that material is in that DRMS permit. And so I'm gonna kind of leave it at that for the moment and go to the next slide, which is our criteria for approval, which is the handout that you got earlier. So this is what's required in order to, make any motion on this application. So the first item is our consistency with a comprehensive plan. This area is identified as rural and remote, it's that pink color on that slide. That is really what that area talks about. A lot is the concern about the cumulative impacts on our existing county roads. And that's definitely what we're seeing on County Road 10, just the development around Twin Lakes. As many more people are moving in, we're seeing the background traffic increase. And now we're adding an operation that will, add to that. And the road maintenance agreement is intended to help compensate for some of that impact on Torrent County Road. The plan also speaks to the importance of economic development and employment that gets generated. There'll be 10 to 15 jobs generated by this mining operation. So that's certainly a benefit and one of the things that we look at and is identified in our current comprehensive plan. So next slide. Consistency with our Lake County Land Development Code. It is inconsistent with our rural district. And again, Katie sort of started out with the issue of the zoning, and maybe in the interest of time, I will let that be a question and answer issue if the planning commission or board has any questions. It really was a mapping error on behalf of the county. So that it's very clearly documented that this zoning was changed in 2001. So there wasn't anything that changed recently, but it was uncovered that our map was wrong. And so the county, has a big responsibility in the fact that this mining operation got approved in a zone district that wouldn't otherwise allow it. And that RUR was set up really to protect land like this. And so these things do happen, it did happen, and here we are, working with the results of that. So I did talk about the extractive operations a little bit. There's largely compliance with that section, and then also consistency with our road standards as evidenced through our road maintenance agreement. So number 3, adequate public safety, transportation and utilities. So they do have an active access permit. In order to proceed, they do a notice to proceed, which are construction plans that they submit to CDOT that show exactly how they're gonna build the improvements, and then they're given the authorization to build them. So all of that is required before they can sell gravel, before they can really start those operations. So again, the road maintenance agreement is a part of the conditions of approval, and it's required with this application. Number 4, it has to do with detriment to the public health, safety and welfare. Again, the APN, which has to do with dust perhaps, the air quality, is in place and will need to be updated if necessary by CDPH&E. We did make modification to the hours of operation, which is one of the few tools that we really have to mitigate some of the noise that's generated by the haul truck. So again, pulling back those hours of operation to help with that a little bit, and maybe with some of the traffic that gets generated at those peak times. So, and again, the limiting of that operation through, May through November, April through November, will also, it does help mitigate the wildlife, some of the wildlife impacts. Alright, number 5, in harmony with the neighboring land uses, well, imagine some of you can have some thoughts about that tonight. But there is an adjacent Willow Creek mine that is, similar in nature to what this application is asking for. It's probably out of harmony really with the growing residential neighborhoods to the south and the east. Where, 2018, we didn't have nearly the number of people that we even have today as the area is growing very rapidly. So I think that's what we're seeing in the room tonight. What we're feeling is that there's a conflict between land uses. And number 6 is it's not overly intensive. And I think you could argue that adding the processing and hauling of aggregate does increase the intensity of this land use in this location. So it is mitigated somewhat through the hours of operation that will help offset some of that impact. And then number 7, will not result in traffic congestion. Well, we've talked a lot about that, so I won't say a lot more, but there will be an increase in traffic congestion. And that intersection is gonna grow in its complexity and, we believe will become more problematic over time. Again, reducing the hours of that will help mitigate that a little bit. But I think, that's, that would seem logical. Number 8, no unnecessary scars on the land. The aggregate is a byproduct of the existing operations, as they did a good job at pointing out, it really is a gravel mining operation with gold as a byproduct, not the other way around. So, and there's a whole mining reclamation process that they have to follow, and so that will help, but there's no doubt about the fact that in the next 20 or 25 years, this is what we will watch happen in this location. So, and then conditions of approval. So we were able to negotiate a little bit on these, and I've talked about most of them. So I'll very briefly say that the first one has to do with they need to be in good standing with the existing CUP. I think we need some verifications on some of the documents that we don't have on our files. The current substitute water supply plan has to be maintained throughout the time the CUP is valid. That number 3 is Lake County will be noticed with adjudication and augmentation water when that has been approved. Number 4, prior to exporting any saleable gravel, they will confirm that the APINs, if there are any, whether additional APINs are required and obtain them as necessary. Number 5, we made some modifications to, and that underlined is the what's changed. Really, the only language that's changed is added the permit number in here, which is probably gonna be helpful over time. And then we combined 2 conditions into this one. So this one says that the access permit has to be maintained. We've had other applications that, the access, the improvements didn't get built and the permits expired, so we had to go back and get them. So that's why that's there. They don't expect that to happen. And then the construction of those improvements that we've talked about have to be done before they start hauling the gravel. So that's condition 5. Condition 6 is we took one out, which was what this is intended to do is really enforce the access permit. And it was Titan's suggestion that this was the better way to do it, and Michael reviewed it, and we talked about it. And what this does is require an annual report on how much they're hauling and how many truck trips have occurred over that year that will show compliance with the CDOT permit. So we are confident in that condition now. Number 7 is that road maintenance agreement I've talked about. Number 8 is that hours of operation. We've talked a lot about that, so I won't say more. We did take out, in the event that government funded jobs are supplied, hours of hauling, that we took that out. there might be a case to be made for how to negotiate that, but we were uncomfortable with leaving open the possibility that hours would increase in ways that we are not aware of. So, yep, number 9, that should a bypass route be feasible, the applicant and county shall revisit that haul truck route in a collaborative manner. So I think, right now we have a study being done, a mobility study that looks at a bypass. And should that bypass come to pass, it would be a great option rather than having those haul trucks go down Harrison. And so we hope for that someday in the future. So number 10 was taken out because we added number 6, modified number 6, and then anything else that gets represented tonight that needs to be part of this will be a condition. So that's kind of how we button this whole thing up and hopefully have addressed the important comments. So with that,
Thank you, Melissa. I think what I'm gonna ask is just so that we can prevent any fainting, we can all go outside and take a quick break, 5 minutes. Everybody good? Come back here by 5:38, please, and then we'll open it back up. questions, up to you.
Just be here for questions, basically, they've been really good partners to work with. They did need our help to get the CDOT permit, because it is a county road, it's not something that any contractor can just come and redo. So we did give them permission to apply for the permit. That is it, not me. But, yeah, so, and they've been great to work with.
Okay, thank you. And then I know Bryce, I think, was here for a minute, I don't know if he's still here.
Yeah.
Oh, Bryce,
Yep, I'm
yeah,
here.
I didn't know if you had anything extra you wanted to add just on the staff presentation part.
Sure. I just want to say that it's not that Water Resources doesn't have any concerns. Oh, hold on, got a dog. It's just that our comments are going to be addressed through a separate avenue, which is the SWSP approval process. I did have one question for the applicant, though. The SWSP application I received for the renewal kind of has an assumption of 150,000 tons of gravel exported a year. And did I hear correctly that this application or the presentation tonight was assuming 300,000 tons of gravel exports?
Yeah, that substitute water supply plan was for 2024, but the augmented water that's going through water court is for 300,000 tons.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I just want to let everyone know that, you know, we do have a separate process for the SWSP review. Our engineer is looking at that and our legal team is looking at it too. We had a brief discussion on it this morning, actually. So we just, we received the new SWSP documentation pretty recently. So gathering our comments to submit to the state.
Yeah, and that's under a different jurisdiction than this conditional use permit, but I just wanted to make sure you have anything you wanted to add for.
Yeah, correct. And I just want to make sure that the condition in the approval just mentions that the SWSP, you know, they have a current one for their current operation, but this SWSP is for the expanded operation. And, you know, our comments will be addressed through that. Lake County's water rights will be protected in that forum. We just want to make sure that it's clear that the condition is, you know, that the expanded operation is contingent upon the expanded water supply plan.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, great. I'm gonna start with, before we open public comment, if there are any questions that, and this doesn't limit you to more questions later, but that county commissioners or planning commission members have for staff or the applicant prior to public comment? Or would you like to wait till after? Yeah, we'll do again. Yeah, that's fine. I just didn't know if there were any that anybody wanted to do that were clarifying prior to.
I'll get started. I noticed in the presentation, your wildlife impact, some of the dates there were different than what I've read was recommended by CPW. The development overlaps elk sphere winter range. CPW recommends timing limitations from 12/1 to 4/30 from beginning of December to the end of April. And you guys always either say approximately April or April 1st.
Yeah, they're out, the beginning of mining is really dependent on when the ground thaws. And so there's like a window, which I believe even begins in March in the DRMS permit.
And another qualifier on the CPW timing limitations is that those timing limitations are on new ground disturbing activities. So like, let's say that we were somewhere that wasn't alpine environment and your operation ran year round, you would be limited on new ground disturbing activities in that time frame, but existing disturbed areas are open for work. And so it's a timing limitation that has to do with when you are disturbing new areas, because that's what's displacing. And it has to do with that if the animals have moved into the area where there's already existing activity, that's not the problematic issue. It's that when the mining moves into new areas that the displacement occurs. And so the timing limitations on that, and this area only has the elk, but you'll see other timing limitations like raptor nests and other things. And it isn't that if a bald eagle flew in and took nests near the site, that a timing limitation is impacted. It's only if the mine goes towards a raptor nest. That's the one that's really easy to envision, is A raptor nest, you don't wanna move into it during breeding season because you might displace the raptor. But if the raptor puts a nest in next to the gravel pit, it's okay because the raptor is chosen the location. So that's how those timing limitations work, is that there's limitations on new disturbance. But active reclamation particularly is important in that early season period because the ground is still frozen and you can doze into the wet areas without risk of getting stuck. And so that's a lot of the activities are centered around those in the early season because they can't run water if the freezing temperatures are too low for the processing, and so it's a lot of activities that are centered around reclamation in that period.
Next question will be about visual impact. I know there's fencing requirements for certain operations. What are those gonna look like? Can you describe, like, some of mining operations install fencing that can be like up to 20 feet tall sometimes, right?
Yeah, the entire site is already fenced with, is it 3 or 4 strand barbed wire?
Barbed wire.
Yeah, but because the active mining area is kind of like depressed relative to the roads, putting a fence up doesn't really mitigate anything, cause it's already below what you're looking at. And their areas of disturbance are pretty far away from the roads. So again, you put a fence up, you can still see over the fence into where they are. So that doesn't, it doesn't seem as applicable in this scenario.
The public welfare and, the welfare of the community seems referenced in here a few times. And 70 decibels, you guys acknowledge that measuring sound isn't an exact science depending on locations and.
I mean, there's very prescriptive ways to be in compliance with that standard. We have a device, we run noise samples if there's a problem. But typically, the noise measured at the property line is nowhere near 70 decibels. You're more likely to pick up other noise, like traffic on the road behind you, if you're standing at the fence line, is much louder by decibels, measured with a device, as the noise that would be coming from the operation, even though you can hear both. But there's a very prescriptive method. It's why when you see like a limit that says 70 dB and then like brackets A is the call out to the method as prescribed by the I think they're a federal standard, I think it's an ANSI standard of how that measurement's done. So it is pretty scientific how it's defined. But you can definitely hear things quieter than 70 decibels.
Okay, and then going by my math here, we got about 38 to 39 haul trucks that are gonna be turning northbound onto Highway 24 a day. Heading uphill, up that bridge, that feels to me like that's gonna cause some traffic issues. How do we even?
So the way that a CDOT access permit works is that a traffic impact study is done that measures the background traffic at an intersection, adds in the additional traffic to be generated by the use, the access use. And then there's a very prescriptive method of how they calculate what's necessary in that intersection. And so when you apply for a CDOT access permit, you don't apply and say, I'd like to have lights at the intersection. There's no portion on the form for that. It's simply, I've submitted a traffic impact study, here's the data, here's our projected impacts, here's the analysis that they've done, that the traffic engineer's done, and then it goes into CDOT, they replicate that simulation of traffic and determine their opinion of the impacts. They sometimes will go back and ask for certain additional information, in this case they did. Our traffic engineer provided that additional information. They did their calculations and they came back with what they wanted to have happen at their intersection. And so there's not a prescriptive way to say, I want this to happen at CDOT's intersection, because it's CDOT's intersection. And so there are times where you apply for an access permit, hoping that you're just going to get a restriping, right? Like the shoulders are pretty wide, maybe we just paint new stripes on here, and then it'll be fine for an access permit. Sometimes that's what you get, sometimes you get turn lanes. We anticipated a requirement of that decel lane at a minimum and thought that the numbers might indicate something in addition to that, but we simply took what CDOT gave back to the county and tightened as what their access permit required. So it's very mathy, it's not a public opinion type of permit at all, it's there's nothing but math for it.
And I think Melissa spoke on this as well, that Lake County did have further discussion with CDOT, expressing concern about an acceleration lane going northbound. And CDOT's process did not lend to that end product. So per their specifications, the traffic use and planned impact for the future still conforms with the standards of what the highway is. Is that fair to say?
CDOT's authority supersedes what we're allowed to.
Well, we
Just-
can't choose what happens with CDOT on the Colorado State Highway.
Since I'm
Yeah.
new-ish to this position, just give me a little grace on this, but what happens if they're wrong and we start ending up with haul trucks getting rear-ended left and right at that intersection?
Could I answer that question?
Yep.
So, part of the reason we actually asked to have the compliance with the traffic study as a condition of approval, or sorry, compliance with the compliance with the access permit to be a condition of approval is that annual review of the intersection is there, and then that can go back to CDOT. And so CDOT could reevaluate the intersection and determine that what they call the service level, and it's graded just like a school book grades, A through F, that the service level is unacceptable and that a change in the intersection will be required. In addition to that, if the access entering from the county road starts to exceed the limit or starts pushing up against the limit, then that's grounds for an additional traffic impact study and additional improvements to the intersection. And so there's an iterative loop that's baked into the way the CDOT access permit works, that essentially that's reevaluated, and if additional things have to happen, then additional things have to happen with the intersection.
It gets revisited yearly, is what you're saying?
We're proposing that it's at a minimum revisited yearly. That probably exceeds CDOT's revisiting frequency,
Okay.
but that at least gives us the opportunity to ask the question in it. So we wanted to make sure that was in there so that that's clearly an iterative approach from the operator and the county side, so that then we can come back, and if it's not working with that CDOT intersection, we have data to represent what's going on.
Gotcha.
And I'm sure Mike can attest to what we've done with that locally. I mean, I think there's been times when CDOT says something and then our traffic increases tremendously and they're like, oh, we gotta change this up, you know, like some of the,
Give you an example, maybe.
yeah,
You could.
exactly,
Safely.
yeah, so.
My last concern is, I always feel like I'm playing a game of unintended consequences in here and trying to have this crystal ball that doesn't exist. Have we considered what happens with different traffic patterns once there's the Highway 82 resurfacing project in conjunction with starting this thing up? Is this starting this year or next year?
The permits with CDOT, well, the gold mining in gravel processing can be happening now, but hauling isn't going to occur until that deceleration lane construction is complete.
Okay, so the hauling, are we a year out from that, or are you guys trying to fire that up this
I
summer?
would anticipate the construction, to take, I don't think it would get done this summer.
They're not gonna overlap, basically, the Highway 82 resurfacing project and your guys'
Is that happening
hauling
this
volume.
summer?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
That's up
then
at
yeah.
Twin Lakes, right?
Well, it's at
yeah, but a lot of
See,
people are
there's
gonna end up going,
There's a,
Oh,
We're
right.
gonna go back.
Oh, I get you, I
24
get you, they're gonna use that.
that comes back around
Gotcha,
Four
I
Bay
gotcha.
and then before.
Yeah, the turn lane is not gonna happen this summer. There's
Okay.
just, you know, engineering permit, I mean, it's gonna be a
Okay,
lengthy,
I'm just trying
lengthy
to
process
think
through
about-
CDOT before you can ever start digging.
alright, that's it for me, thanks.
Any other planning commission members, or county commissioners that have any questions before public comment, or you can save them for after as well?
Could I make one other piece on that overlap issue? The permit of the limit of 300,000 tons is the maximum. And so it is very unlikely that in year one, which probably doesn't happen until next spring, is gonna be 300,000, right? That's the maximum, so that we don't have to come and revisit this overly frequently. It is much more likely that it is a third of that or a quarter of that until there's a market demand for it. But 300,000 is the maximum that is being asked for, and that's why there's a condition of approval that there's 300,000. The air emissions permits will be a maximum of 300,000. All these pieces are set at that as a maximum, which is not obviously the expected situation. If that makes any sense.
So that's what you're basing the 110 trucks, 55 in and out a day, is on that 300,000.
That's maximum, and I would anticipate it's gonna take quite a while to build a market like that.
But then that also means that,
I just gotta say the until then. Do we have, sorry, I can't see you all on Zoom, but if we have commissioners or planning commission members have any questions before public comment, otherwise I'll go ahead and start with my list.
I just have one quick question, Matt Bullock here, and I'm sorry if I didn't catch this. Is there a sales tax associated with these loads? And if so, is there a projection for that sales tax?
Go ahead.
Sales tax is on point of delivery, so it's not taxed at origin. So if it's delivered within the city, there's a sales tax and a county sales tax that would go on the city. If it's delivered inside the county, the sales tax goes there. If it goes south and leaves the county, then the sales tax is paid on point of delivery.
Okay, thank you.
That wasn't put into the benefits for the county because it's hard to project where it would go. As well as, it's on the basis of the sales price. And so it would depend on what materials were being sold to generate a tax prediction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna move into our public comment phase. Again, I just wanna reiterate, and for Zoomers, if you could please private message CC on the chat, if you would like to speak, and we'll just need your full name. And then she will keep a list of that, and once we get through with in-person comments, we'll move on to you to make sure everybody's has a chance to comment if they wish. I just wanna reiterate that we're gonna try to keep everybody at 2 minutes, please just be respectful of that. Please don't make comments when other people are making comments, and please know that the rule of order for this is that all comments be made or questions be made to the planning commission, county commissioners, not to the applicant, and not questions that are, like, you may ask the question, then we'll get to an answer, but it's not part of your 2 minutes. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. If there's any questions, let us know. Again, if you're on Zoom, please keep yourself muted, and then just put yourself in the chat if you would like to speak. So I think, did everybody who's in the room have a chance to, put your name on this fun little clipboard? Okay. I'm gonna start with the people who said yes, they want to speak, and then I'll go back to the maybes, and then if there are anybody who wrote no has changed their mind, I'll give you an opportunity to raise your hand, okay? My first yes on here is Ben Miller.
That's me.
Oh, that's you. There you
I'm
go.
Katie.
Sorry, yes, and you're Katie.
And then Chris is also yes.
All right, I have Laura
Lynn,
Lynn.
yeah, hi. I bought my home in the Panarch with the hope of having a quiet environment. For the past 2 years, I've asked this city and this county to help me. I live 4 streets from the edge of that mine. I have heard nothing but grinding, gravel, beeping. I have been woken up at 7 a.m. in the morning with a sound of rocks being dropped into metal containers. I cannot believe that this is going to be going on for 20 years. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Yeah, potentially, and again, I just wanna say you may ask questions as part of your 2 minutes, but we're not having dialogue as through that, so we probably won't
I'm trying to get
specifically
an
ask
answer.
this.
I
Yes.
would like to know.
And we're,
The point is, for the love of God, could we at least have a Saturday? I mean, thank you for reducing the hours. I understand. This is a business, they've got to do their business. I get that. I would have never bought if I knew there was a mining operation. But for the love of God, could we at least be able to sit out on our decks and have a cup of coffee on Saturday without listening to the beeping, the grinding, the crunching, the crap? It's frustrating when you're trying to sleep. You got your window open, you worked all week long. And you're woken up by a damn truck with their back beeping and they're crunching and they're grinding and rocks hitting metal. I can hear it, and I was an audio engineer before I became a nurse, so I know what a 70 decibel is. That's louder. I can see their operation from my deck, and I can hear it, and I'm sick and I'm tired of it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, and the next person I have on here is Joan Lover.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to measure decibels or anything, but I can assure you the sound that she's talking about, the grinding, the dumping in the trucks, I mean, it's as loud as a chainsaw, and that's not 70 decibels. And you cannot sit outside. I mean, and all this is going on during the day when people are outside. You cannot be outside on the north side of Pan-Ar and enjoy your property. And the other thing is, and this is devaluating these people's property in Pan-Ar. This noise, no one's gonna buy, your house with that noise going on. And I think that's something that the commissioners really need to consider. And the dust on Shore Pretty Drive, which I think you're calling 24A or something, I'm not sure. But, I mean, the dust is horrible. You're saying they're wetting it down or something? I don't know when they're doing it, but the dust is horrible. So, I think y'all need to consider our community. Thank you.
I'm gonna do that, maybe, because I can do it.
I'm doing it.
Oh, you're doing it, okay, great. Perfect, and sorry, I don't know if I can read this. I think this is George, maybe? 13769 Highway 24? Yeah, I suppose this would be Benson.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, you can't read my handwriting?
Were you a doctor and I didn't know that?
Yeah.
I see, okay.
Well, I took it away with you.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm George Benson, and for the sake of transparency, I'm the president of the CC4LC, the Concerned Citizens for Lake County. You've all have seen me and with the mill issues and that. And as a point of reference, the highest decibel rate in this meeting so far has been 84 dB. The average is 58. So that just may give people an idea of what looking at. The hammer drill was about 56, 58 was the concern that CC4LC has with this project isn't that isn't the transportation and congestion issue on Highway 24 and County Road 10. It's adding the 82 one-way trips through Harrison, down Harrison every day. And I don't think anyone has really taken that into consideration from the presentations that I've seen. In addition to that, you've already approved another, you've already approved in the slide project 70 per day. And if Woodville Mill ever gets its act together and gets approved, that'd be another 40. These are one-way trips. So our issue with this project is how many trucks per day are too many. So I would like that number from planning, and I would like that number from county commissioners to let us know what your upper limit of of 40, what's the, are these tandem axle trucks? Or are they,
What are the sizes?
yeah, that's a question.
for you guys then.
Yeah, and we can ask that question, yeah.
Okay, so, the
There are two. Oh, or 2 minutes, yeah.
the wear and tear on Harrison, the safety issues, the noise issues on Harrison aren't being considered in the need to be considered.
Thank you. Betty?
He said what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. PJ?
Thank you. I urge denial of the CUP. I echo a lot of George's comments and I'll expand on them. The detriments to public health, safety, and welfare from increased heavy truck traffic on US 24 and through Leadville far outweigh any benefits. Surprisingly, the applicant does not address these collateral impacts. The county didn't as well. We know that increased heavy truck traffic will result in more noise, dust pollution, and a less safe environment for both locals and tourists. We're facing 100 transits through Leadville per day, assuming reduced operating hours that were previously discussed. The benefits are few. Lake County will receive no property taxes. It will receive a proceeds tax of perhaps 10 cents per ton. Lake County will receive no mining royalties. There will be no additional employees. Sand and gravel processing and sales is not the type of mining legacy that distinguishes Leadville Lake County. Additional sales taxes? How much of the aggregate will be sent out of county? You should deny the proposed conditional use permit based on the criteria in the land development code. Land development code criterion 4, the proposed conditional use is likely to be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare of county residents, or to cause hardship for neighboring persons. It seems the applicant's position is the compliance to its state permits is sufficient. This is not responsive to traffic impacts to Leadville, which would be significant. Land Development Code's criterion 7, the proposed conditional use will result in traffic congestion or hazards to vehicle or pedestrian traffic. It will. We all know that different additional traffic congestion and safety hazards will result from more heavy trucks transiting through town. Development Code criterion 1, the proposed conditional use is not consistent with the express purposes, intents, goals, and policies contained in the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. Sand and gravel operations are not listed as an economic growth element in the current comprehensive plan. Until the update is completed, we won't know whether the community will value this as a future goal. There's precedent for denial. In 2018, the proposed sand and gravel operation at Birdseye was denied by the Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners in part of traffic considerations.
Thank you, Pete, you're at your 2 minutes, thank you. Paul Terranova?
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I address the room here? Paul Terranova, General Manager.
No, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
you have to just do it to the county, or
Oh.
to the planning commission board, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Paul Terranova, General Manager of Mount Albert Water, full-time resident of Pan-Arc. I'm gonna speak to the elephant in the room, which is the zoning. 2001, it's been rural zoning according to resolution 01-42. I understand that mistakes happen. Staff and board turnover. Right, that being said, it'd be 100% irresponsible to perpetuate mistakes of the past going forward. As a result, I encourage revocation of CUP 18-53 as a part of this CUP in accordance with 3.6.1.c. 4. There are precedents for this. Convictions get overturned all the time. Business acquisitions go bad. Athletes get drug tested years after their competition and get stripped of medals. The applicant has received 4 years of gold mining. Sand and gravel is not an issue of national security, state or local security, or other high-level county importance. We're not solving homelessness or healthcare or well-being as part of this. Thank you for your consideration. In revoking 18-53 as part of this CUP application. Thank you.
Okay, I think I've made it through the yeses on here, so I'm gonna go back to the maybes. I have Lisa Dunn.
I'm just gonna, Christian just left.
Okay.
My only major concern is the traffic. I'm one house off the Harrison, and I can't get across the street all summer long. You don't think those trucks are gonna slow that traffic down even more? Going to Buena Vista, I think it's gonna take us an hour now instead of a half hour normally without summer traffic. And summer traffic, it takes you 45, and it's gonna take more than that behind all those slow trucks. And people are very impatient. They'll be passing, there'll be accidents. And I guess that's what it takes for CDOT to change things. Because those trucks don't go 65, 70 miles an hour like they are when they get off that bridge. And people don't have the patience to wait for them to go all the way to Buena Vista.
Sandy Booth.
I'm for approving this permit because, I have lived here for 47 years. I live on Half Moon Road. ACA has had their gravel pit there for a few years, and we have dealt with the increase in traffic all summer long. All summer long with the trucks and all the tourists and everything. There has not been a significant impact in those gravel trucks hauling. We don't have any turning lanes, we don't have anything like that on Half Moon from 300. There has not been issues. There are increases in employment, I know because my husband and my son both work for Titan. I think it should be approved because it will give us another gravel pit when ACA pulls out. We need gravel for our Boom Days events. We need gravel for people's driveways, local roads. I think this should be approved.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have any other maybes on here.
We have
See.
several, when you're ready, and Melissa and I have several to.
I was on not necessarily, I would like to say something.
Okay, Alec?
Yeah.
Bowman? Okay.
Hi, Alec. I think it's very telling that the presentation we got offered nothing in the way of human impact. There's a lot of other impact, but not about just what trucks going by. I mean, you're essentially turning any lane that's using this into a trucking road. And nobody had an idea that they were gonna be buying a house or living on a trucking road. This is a road pull out from all of us. One councilman asked a question about effects of fencing and everything else. Like, we got a lot of ins and outs of how the mining industry works that is not material to what we're talking about right here and how it affects us. That was a lot of wordy answers that didn't actually answer any of our questions, and a lot of, hey, yeah, this is what tells us. We've got a lot of prescriptive was the word that was used a lot about decibel levels. We just heard that was less, that was 58, 56 decibels, that was pretty annoying, right? So 70s can be pretty annoying. Yes. Coming down our road every day. Plus, a lot of us are either in retirement age or we're trying to raise kids here. We don't want to do that on a trucking route, especially when we didn't know that it was going to be a trucking route. This is the epitome of a road pull.
Okay, we have some online Zoomers. Do you have a list of those for us?
I think just Jerry James.
Okay, Jerry James.
Okay, if you can hear me, I hope you can. I live on property just to the southeast. We border this operation. We're between Forebay and this mining operation. We absolutely hear the noise. We deal with the dust. We deal with the fact we've lost wildlife that used to go through our property. We run an operation, a camp for guests during the summer. This has been a noise and affecting us. I think the county should reevaluate our property taxes as a result of this, and $150,000 is nothing to road maintenance. They should blacktop County Road 24 all the way up. and they ought to do something to all of their roads in order to reduce the um, dust. And I can't imagine 55 trucks on a rural road uh, going in any direction. And then the last thing will be, I think the turning location on Highway 24 is going to be a disaster. I hope they have a lot of insurance.
Okay, thank you. Was there a second one on there or no?
No, that was
Okay.
just a comment for someone.
And then Anne, you had a few, okay.
Well, there's one more. Brian Nevins.
Sorry, I didn't hear your last name.
Brian Nevins.
Brian Nevins?
Hi, yes, just a couple quick things. As was just mentioned, I'd like to know how far $150,000 would get down 2 miles of County Road 10, repaving, resurfacing. I don't know what the road base is, but I would be interested to know how that road can handle that many trucks going up and down it on a daily basis. Also, I do have I heard mention of during Titan's presentation about that they would be amicable to, or they were told, or something happened where they would not be permitted to go down Harrison when there was an event, but they would use all the truck detour routes on the weekends when there's events on Harrison. I would like to know how many counts of trucks there are on a Saturday when Harrison is closed now as compared to when Titan would be fully operational on a Saturday morning, because I feel like that would be a huge burden on the city of Leadville with that amount of trucks. And finally, the traffic study, I would like to know when that was completed. Was it completed in June, July, or August, when obviously County Road 10 and US 24 intersection is its busiest?
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I saw that Eric Lane has some questions in the chat.
Eric, if you wanna go ahead and speak those, or are you asking us to read them?
Which would you prefer?
I'd prefer for you to use your 2 minutes and speak them, please.
Okay, as I recall, I'm supposed to run through all the questions and let the answers follow. Is that still the
Yes.
policy?
Yes.
Okay. How many tons of gravel is equivalent to one haul load? Second question, is the 50 cents per ton for both the empty truck weight, which is typically 10 to 15 tons, and the gravel load? Question 3, each haul load is a round trip. Does the 50 cents per ton include the weight of the empty haul truck returning to the mine? Question 4, my civil engineering experience is familiar with designing a road's useful life based on ton miles. What's the conversion factor from ton road to ton miles? Question 5, what is the total number of haul loads that the county can use for annual budgeting? And number 6 is not a question, it's a statement. I'm about 5 miles north of the mine. When the antelope figure out I'm there, they scatter. I suspect the noise of the mining will keep the antelope off the property completely. That is the mine property. 5 questions, 1 statement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and Anne, you had
Yes.
a couple of emailed comments.
Letters.
Yes.
The first one is from David Erb.
I'm gonna ask you to just speak up a little bit, sorry.
Absolutely. First one, David Erb. And we own a home in Lake County and concerned about the extreme negative impacts of the proposed gravel haulage on the roads and residents of Lake County. The applicant estimates 55 round trips per day by heavy truck. Peak flows would see 10 heavy truckloads per hour through our community. As you know, there are also additional heavy truckloads being contemplated by the CJK Slag Reclamation Project, 8 truckloads per hour, as well as other potential milling project loads. Totaling this heavy traffic yields just an overwhelming amount of congestion, noise, truck exhaust pollution, and airborne dust to our community. Added to this is our concern regarding a separate and independent study for a new truck route bypassing downtown Leadville that is currently underway. One option for that relocated truck route is right in front of our home in Grand West Estates via County Road 99. And there are no alternate routes being proposed other than the existing route through downtown Leadville that do not newly impact some significant and established residential communities. In summary, we urge Lake County Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners to deny the Titan AU application for finding that the conditional use 1 does not conform with the Lake County Comprehensive Plan intent regarding it not being a preferred economic growth goals and strategy. 2 is detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare of county residents, principally in the city of Leadville, due to increased congestion from truck traffic resulting in additional pollutants, dust, and noise, potential safety interactions with jaywalkers, and potential loss of some tourism. Number 3 will result in pollution, traffic congestion, and hazards principally in the city of Leadville for the foreseeable future. A truck diversion route is feasible and affordable. A truck route, if feasible and affordable, will only transfer these problems to other areas of the county and negatively impact a different group of citizens. The next one is from Donald Gardner. Dear Lake County Community Planning and Development, I write in reference to application file 2403 Box Creek Mining Conditional Use Permit. In this application, Titan Gold has submitted a proposal to allow gravel mining near Lake County Road 10. This is in addition to a previously approved Lake County Gold mining permit number 1853. I've read in an email from Friends of Twin Lakes that the only alteration for the in-place permit is the addition of sand and gravel processing and the export of construction materials. This may sound innocuous, but it has huge detrimental consequences for those of us who live in South Lake County and who already pay to maintain County Road 10 through our property taxes. There has been minimal traffic on County Road 10 from the current mining operations. Allowing Titan Gold to haul away their spent tailings will result in a multitude of heavy equipment trucks going back and forth on County Road 10 each weekday. This will not only cause traffic problems on County Road 10, but also safety problems where County Road 10 intersects with State Highway 24. There are likely harmful implications for wildlife in the area, as elk, deer, and antelope, pronghorn, cross County Road 10 throughout the day and night, and heavy traffic will deter them from continuing to do so. Plus, additional noise caused by sand and gravel processing will no doubt cause these animals to migrate from lodgepole flats. I doubt that the additional dust produced by the new operations will encourage wildlife to inhabit the area. I hope that CPW has been consulted on this decision. I have CC'd the CPW Commission. I ask that Lake County Community Planning and Development deny this request. However, I am almost 70 years old, and I know that by the time government officials ask for public input on a decision, the decision has already been made. It is based almost exclusively on anticipated tax revenues or taxpayers, not irrespective of taxpayer sentiments. That said, and with that understanding, I ask that Lake County Community Planning and Development impose strict requirements on Titan Gold that will moderate traffic and especially require them to repair damage done to County Road 10 throughout the life of their application approval. This is to be done without delay, at their expense, and not at the end of the year or whenever Titan Gold feels like doing it. If for no other reason, fire trucks from the South Fire Station need free and navigable roads in which to respond to emergencies. I note that and they reference a document here. There is a document entitled Road Maintenance Agreement. This, like the rest of the documents, are in zip files that I cannot open without buying a new version of WinZip. Perhaps my concerns are addressed in this document. I can only know if you are able to send it to me in zip. So it's just, I might adding that zipping files prevents residents from making informed opinions about decisions for which Lake County is asking public input. The next one is from Michael O'Leary. please have the following read into public comment for the 4 p.m. meeting today. I am the closest full-time residence to the Box Creek mining. I am highly concerned for myself and my neighbors that the noise decibels will increase with the gravel processing. There are times that I cannot have a conversation on my deck in the summer because of the noise. Plus, if my neighbors want to sell their property, perhaps the noise may be a deterrent. The other factor is the long hours that they mine. Like mentioned before, having guests on a Sunday night and trying to enjoy the beauty on my deck is distracted by the mining that goes on until 6 p.m. Thus, can they reduce their hours and the decibel levels, particularly late in the day at least? Thank you. The next one is Rose Ann Goblick. I object vigorously to this proposal for additional sand and gravel processing and the export of the construction materials. I own lot 259 in the Twin Lakes Edition 1A of Mount Elbert Claymore Ranch. The sand and gravel processing will add dust and pollution, while the additional transport of construction materials will add truck traffic and noise to what is now a peaceful and pristine area. Property values will decline and the Twin Lakes area will suffer. The applicants for this permit should be required to submit an unbiased study of my concerns to the County Board of Commissioners prior to the board's consideration in this matter.
I'm not going to.
Okay.
Jordan Kelly. Dear Lake County Commissioners, I just wanted to share that my husband and I are really against the conditional use permit for that Box Creek sand and gravel mine. As someone who owns property up in Grand West Estates, this is not why we chose to settle in Lake County. We bought our place because it's quiet, not much traffic, and we're surrounded by nature. That's a big deal for us. The idea of 55 round trips of big trucks every day hauling gravel, that totally goes against why we chose to live here. It's going to bring a ton of noise, dust, and pollution right where we wanted peace and quiet. Like Peter Day and a lot of other folks, I really don't see how the possible money for this mine outweighs the negative impacts, health, safety, and just the overall quality of life in Lake County, especially for those of us in quieter spots like Grand West Estates. We are really hoping you'll take a hard look at this and decide to deny the permit. Thanks for listening, Jordan Kelly. Matt Kelly. This is not the same. I'm writing to express my strong opposition. Also as a property owner of Grand West Estates. Again, that talked about some of the first two are similar. So same paragraphs, and then this one's different. While proponents suggest this will justify a truck bypass, the immediate and foreseeable consequence is a dramatic increase in heavy truck traffic directly through Leadville, and potentially even through Grand West Estates, using County Road 99. This increased traffic would shatter the tranquility we value and significantly detract from the natural environment we sought. The anticipated rise in noise pollution, dust, and emissions will undoubtedly diminish our quality of life and negatively impact the local ecosystem. Furthermore, the safety risk associated with such high volume of heavy trucks on our local roads cannot be ignored. Like many residents, I share the concerns outlined by Peter Day and others. So I think that is the same paragraph. Okay, a couple more. Stephanie Coates. The proposal by Titan to conduct gravel mining and export of construction materials. The letter sent out to residents of Panarch Lake County makes it sound very straightforward and innocuous, stating there is previously approved Lake County gold mining permit in place, lends it to sounding like no big deal. And I'm willing to bet a lot of people just ignored the letter, since we are all very aware of the gold mining operations. I see several glaring problems with the proposal. This is a big deal for residents of Panarch in southern Lake County. I find the CDOT recommendation laughable. They obviously just did calculations and averages based on studies in 2019, 2020, and 21. And didn't bother to go and sit at the intersection of 10 and 24 in 2024. getting onto Highway 24 and County Road 10, head northbound to Leadville on any given day during the proposed 6 days a week of hauling aggregate is not easy. It will get only worse with the increased addition of trucks hauling gravel and construction materials. The trip generation figures are extremely concerning to me and seem ridiculous. 110 daily trucks, 55 trips, and 55 trips out daily, 6 days a week, 9 months of the year. This is excessive. That is equivalent to adding 330 passenger cars a day. Sobering. The road is going to be destroyed by heavy trucks. Think of the ruts in the right lane on I-70. County Road 10 will be worse. Who's going to maintain the road? We pay to maintain County Road 10 through our property taxes. So I presume the answer is the residents are going to be paying. Unacceptable. We have a 2-minute limit to use as well. Yeah. So finally, the biggest concern is our wildlife in this area. We have elk, pronghorn, deer that cross this section of County Road 10 throughout the day and night. Very seldom do I travel in and out of Pan Arc that I don't see activity from these creatures. This is their home and we are going to stress them even more with the increased truck traffic. I fear they will be forced to relocate out of Lodgepole Flats. Okay. This one is from Christine and Joseph Luth. We are filing a statement of opposition for the additional use permit. The permit allowing for processing sand and gravel would significantly increase the already excessive noise level. In the past, there's been no effort to mitigate this problem. There's been a very noticeable decrease in the wildlife population in the area. The increased usage of County Road 24 by vehicles has resulted in ruts, dust, and mud. The national forest that borders our property has been significantly damaged, and the natural beauty has been tarnished. It is disappointing that action has not been taken to preserve the spectacular views we once had. Property values in the area have decreased. Thank you for your attention. Natalie Ruggieri. I'm writing to express my concerns about the Box Creek application. She references Peter Day's comments, and it's, let's see. I don't think she made it. She said she might make it to this, but she is logging her concerns essentially. Then Robert Whitbeck, last one. Received your notice of filing with a few questions. Does this request increase potential truck traffic considering the addition of sand and gravel? If so, are there estimates that the company has provided increased traffic? With sand and gravel processing involve increased blasting and related noise impacts for the current road operations? Is your office in support of this extension? I did respond to him. So that is it.
Thank you.
And Heather, maybe help me online.
Okay.
The first was Kevin Kirchner has a comment.
Kevin Kirster, go ahead. Alright, I guess we can just read his comment, if you wanna just read it, I can't.
I see the Lake County Land Use Department staff review and report. It says that something was sent to the Pan Arc Metro District who didn't respond. I've been on the Metro District board since its inception and don't recall that we were ever asked for comment. This raises questions as to whether the actual groups were properly informed / comments requested.
Great. And just for future on our Zoomers, if you cannot put the comments in there, really, we just want you to give your names to CC so that you can have your 2-minute comments in here, just so that we don't start a big discussion in the thread that we can't really address. Yeah. Was there somebody else on this?
Eric Lane has additional comments, but I think he already had his 2 minutes.
Okay. I need another 5 minutes to go outside. So it is 6:35, and we can be promptly back in here at 6:40. then that's okay. And then I will go through anybody who marked no, who may be still on. Okay, sorry about that, Zoomers. What we're doing now is I'm gonna just go through, and allow anybody who's in the room who maybe wrote no on this list who wants to speak to go ahead, and it was Anita
Mason from
Mason.
Twin Lakes. And my question is, I know a lot of people have latched onto the $155,000 that the county will get. But if he talked about that it was only gonna be 100,000 tons, so that 155 then becomes 50,000. And is that gonna be the rate without any cost of living increases or anything over the life of the thing? Or will there be a minimum charge for the road maintenance?
Okay. Please state your full name for the record.
Yeah, Chris Tufty, so I just had a comment on, just something to think about, because I understand everybody's concerns, I can see all the angles of it, but one other question is, if the, it is not permitted and, there's no trucks running gravel there, does that mean all construction stops, or are trucks with gravel running from somewhere else the same number? Because the jobs will still continually create the same amount of trucks driving through, correct? And the other thing to think of is, everybody that has built a house has had trucks to come in and help build their house, and it's all good until the house is done, because they want more around them. And that is, the general consensus on all construction. Once our project is done, we don't want noise around us. That doesn't mean that it diminishes the people's problems with noise, it just shows that every project has that same noise level, and then the next project is complained on because of their noise level, and then so on and so forth. But ultimately, the trucks are still gonna go through whether they're coming from this area or somewhere else. It's not going to change the impact of trucks driving down Harrison Avenue. Thank you.
Okay, you already had your 2 minutes?
Are we not allowed to say something else based on?
Correct, until I get through anybody
and-
else
yeah,
who
yeah,
wants
sure.
to speak, and then we may revisit.
Sure.
But we're not gonna have everybody go back through a 2-minute thing. Anybody, yep, just state your full name for the record, yeah.
Steve, I'm concerned about the haulage throughout the county. And his presentation did specify where the was to go.
Okay, so I believe the question is that if there could be more clarification on deliveries being run in or out of the county, and if there's any data supporting that. Okay, great, thank you. Was there somebody else around the corner that raised there? Okay. All right, and now I would like to go to the applicant to, if you have any rebuttal to what you've heard this evening, and addressing any of the comments that were made before we go into our questions session.
I just wanna update the information on the traffic impact study. So the original one was run 2021, when we first started looking at the process of delivering gravel within the area. When the application went in, CDOT requested that it be updated to 2024, the application or the traffic impact study, that would have been the most recent data available. And so it's based on 2024 volumes. And then it was also determined through the CDOT data, there's a permanent traffic monitor on Highway 24 that has daily count trips all the time that you can pull from. And then it was determined that the appropriate month was July based on traffic volumes. And so the traffic study was done using July as the target month for modeling. Well, it was in 2024's data, and the way that works is you have localized data, and then you adjust it by monthly numbers that CDOT has a prescriptive way of calculating it, but essentially July, like everyone has commented, is the troublesome month for traffic, and so traffic modeling for the service level of the intersection is based on 2024's data and based on the month of July as the target month for service levels of the intersection.
Alright, anything else? now I'm going to bring it back to planning commission and county commissioners, if there are any questions or comments we want to, have addressed prior to going into closing public comment. I'm gonna start with one little, comment that was made in one of our letters tonight, only because it's come up recently a lot in the stuff that I see online and things like that, and I personally take a lot of offense to it. The decisions are made before we come in this room right here, because I spend a lot of time devoting volunteer hours to be on this board, and if I had made my decision before this, that would be a waste of time. If I thought the county commissioners had their decisions made before we walked in this room, I wouldn't be doing this, and I wouldn't spend the hours and time away from my family to do this. So I wanna stress that I believe staff, and I've believed this for the 15, 20 years I've been on this board, acts in good faith. I believe that everybody on this board and commission currently acts in good faith to make sure that we don't know much about the projects except the data that is put in the file. And then we come to this meeting and we hear everybody. And I believe that everybody works in what they feel is the best capacity to do what's best for this community. And I think everybody's intentions are positive, whether you agree with the decisions or not. So I really wanna put that out there because it's been circling a lot in this community lately. And I think assuming that there are negative intentions with our leadership and amongst each other is really becoming toxic, and so I'd like to bring that back to a place with, like, if there are questions, let's ask them, but let's not assume a negative intent. So sorry, but I had to put that out there, quickly, because at this moment, I have no decision made on this file, and that's 100% honesty. So I just wanna start with that, to give everybody a little bit more benefit of the doubt. But yeah, I don't know if anybody wants to lead questions or comments prior to us closing.
I have a question. Just to give us context on the current operations, can you tell us about violations of any kind or accidents that have occurred since you've been working out there?
Well, we've had a couple of trips to the emergency room with a few stitches here and there, but nothing serious.
Okay, so that's on the MSHA side.
And that's MSHA totally regulates that, we get
Right.
investigated, and it knows, the few small incidents were so small that nobody even comes out. They just do a verbal, fill out some paper.
Okay,
And
No serious accidents.
no incidents to the environment.
right, okay, that was the other part of it, was noise, dust, you've already answered safety. So, any citations or warnings from the regulatory agencies? Okay. And currently, how much truck traffic is there? I'm assuming
No.
just flasks of gold, basically, that's
Yeah,
comes off
just
the
employees
side.
coming to work,
And
morning
then
at
you have
7.
parts and repairs and those kinds of things.
UPS, FedEx, is there a lot.
Fuel deliveries.
Fuel deliveries once every 10 days or so.
Okay. Thank you.
Jason, you have any?
Well,
Yeah.
go, keep
No,
going.
go ahead,
This
give
is-
more,
this
keep
is a-
going, yeah.
This is a different subject, it's the intersection. I think we're all hearing a lot about the intersection. I am really surprised that CDOT did not require a north, turning lane to go north on 24 from County Road 10. So right now, County Road 10 just has east and westbound. There's no turning pockets or lanes. So how can you get 300,000 tons a year through that intersection with the truck quantities that we're hearing? And I understand you're saying that could be in the future, well, it could be tomorrow too, but I think if you have a deceleration lane coming southbound on 24, that's great. I think you need an acceleration lane going northbound on 24 because you're going up a bridge. It's got a grade to it. And then you also need a acceleration lane southbound on 24, and then a deceleration lane going northbound on 24, turning on to County Road 10. I think it's gonna be gridlock, quite honestly, from what I could interpret with the numbers. And I think the lines of sight, even though CDOT says there's 1,000+ feet of line of sight, I can foresee a time where you're gonna have 4 semis at that intersection all at once. And if you don't have all those turning lanes, it's just gonna come to a stop. So that's a question in my mind is, how is it really gonna work? Okay.
So I have all kinds of questions, and I know Ann looks at me when I start asking too many questions.
No, you're allowed to ask it.
But the maintenance, the road maintenance, what was that called, the road?
Road maintenance agreement with
Agreement.
the county.
I know it might not get up to 150,000 a year based on the loads coming out of there and whatnot, but I don't know if anybody else knows, but there's a lot of mud in Leadville on the dirt roads when they get wet, and so when you're wetting them down, are the tires getting a bunch of mud on them and then coming out into the main roads? Is that what that maintenance agreement is for? And is that gonna be done on regular time by Lake County? Or is it gonna be done in overtime? How fast is that gonna get eaten up to where, hey, we don't have any money to clean this up anymore? Is there gonna be something to bridge that gap if we have exceeded that cost? I don't know, you know, maybe you have an answer for that, or, cause I know cost goes.
Yeah, but those things that we could do to mitigate anything being drug out onto the asphalt road. And Titan is also in that agreement, accepted responsibility for the dirt road to make sure that it doesn't do that.
Okay.
Create more problems on the asphalt road.
Okay, cause I mean, my windshield's already beat up by all the rocks on the road and then more rocks and, yeah, I mean, you know, everybody that lives in Colorado, I think, knows that, but, so I was just curious about that, because if there's a small year where you're not bringing out as much gravel and there's a very small amount, but, you know, I don't know, it was during a muddier month and there's twice as much work to do, but not the funds to cover that. What happens there, I guess, or who's responsible for that? You know, that would be one of my concerns, or I don't know if there's something in place for that, or.
I think the impact fee money isn't for that. They're required to be responsible for the cost of whatever is incurred in the road maintenance agreement separately from that impact fee.
Okay, so that is a separate.
Correct?
Yeah, for County Road 10.
Okay.
Like I said, the impact fee would be for the asphalt road.
Okay.
The other stuff Titan has agreed to maintain the dirt road, but they access the line with.
That's separate from that money.
Yeah.
Okay, cause I live near a dirt road and the biggest things that go by are a plow once in a while, the grader, right? Maybe once in a big storm. And then there's a trash truck once or twice a week, and that's it. And they do their damage over time, and so I can see, you know, that. Do we really know what that impact of what 110 trips looks like with a full load? And were these 13-ton load or tandem trailers or one single bed in these?
And we're supposed to wait to answer it.
No, you can.
Correct, so
This is-
let me answer question number one.
Oh, okay.
So the maintenance agreement for 24A, that's, like you said, is gonna include any track on as their problem. And so if track on becomes a problem, they'll figure out how to deal with it. We've seen lots of places get a small used street sweeper or something from, and that typically takes care of it if it's problematic. But the best part is to put good gravel on the road in front of it so that the track on doesn't happen in the first place. And then mag chloride and treatments to the road. What was their other question?
Possibly, I was gonna say possibly pave the first 50 feet.
Yeah.
Of 24A.
Yeah.
To get rid of it before it gets on.
We see like a lot of those rumble mats, the big yellow dimple mats, you know, to try and pull
There's solutions
stuff off,
there.
you know, thing.
So
Okay.
that if if there's track on from 24A onto that road, that's their problem. It's not part of the fee.
It doesn't become Lake County's cost out of that 150.
Because the impact is 24A, that's a 24A problem. And I think these have to be very clearly spelled out in the road maintenance agreement, which is a condition of approval. As far as how do roads handle hauls and loads, we are part of something like 20 gravel pits a year, new gravel pits in the state, spread across small counties and large counties. And people have a very good understanding of the impacts on a road for that increased weight. We believe that we have put in a very reasonable number for what that impact fee is. It's probably higher than a lot of other ones that we've seen, but often the tonnages are much bigger on the higher fees. This is, in the scale of gravel pits, is not enormous in the state. It's a very common, small county type of size pit. What was your other, question on trucks? It's the tandem versus trailer is gonna depend on the end consumer. So if it's someone's private driveway, it's probably a tandem dump truck because there's no way to deliver it otherwise. If it's something bigger, it's gonna be a bigger truck that can deliver it, and it's because the end consumer is paying the hours of the truck. And so one of them can haul 14 tons and one of them can haul 22 tons. And so the delivered price to the consumer is gonna determine those things, as well as like, can they fit a semi into their driveway or whatever. There are gonna be sometimes there'll be belly dump roads, like for instance, if a county road is going to put a little bit of skim and fresh gravel on, they'll choose that type of trailer because of the end use. And so the mine would have a hard time telling you what the mix is. Typically you would see in a rural setting like this, between 50-50 tandem to trailer and 30 tandem to 70 trailer, depending on how accessible the community is, meaning like narrow mountain roads, you're stuck with tandem trucks, period.
So the 3 passenger car equivalent is compared to a single load truck, or is
Either
that?
truck, so either size truck is considered a 3 passenger car equivalent. So the mine, technically, if all they did was tandems and they were up against the limit, would have less total tons based on truck limits than if they were doing it all with trailers. But it's unlikely that either of those limits are gonna be hit, but you're gonna get whatever shows up to the gate to get loaded.
And then just to clarity, a single loaded truck merging onto the highway, which has less weight, would be slightly faster than a larger tandem loaded twice the weight, I don't know, whatever,
So that's all in the math of the way CDOT prescribes how they do intersections. So if you don't think CDOT's doing math right, that's a CDOT problem. We've done a traffic study, it was updated as fresh as it could be to go in.
And when I asked you about the traffic studies, that was based on the data, did you also do an independent during the same month? Or just using?
It was collected on the
combined?
data, and then CDOT will adjust it based on their data sets. And this is all normal, this is all how access permits.
I don't know how that works out, so I'm just asking.
Their process is hyper prescriptive and almost no interaction once that thing's gone in there. And then it comes back out and they tell you what it is. And it's not typically I've not seen it be negotiable. I don't think I've ever seen it negotiable. And you're just stuck with what their answer is because they do it their way.
Right, a way of providing that metric.
And their basis is what they think the service level of an intersection is currently and will be in the future. And so you have to make sure that you don't impact today. And then they have a planning window that's 10 or 20 years out of anticipated traffic volume increases from the background. So like if you said in 2000, the traffic level on 24 or on the highway was X, they're going to project out into that bigger window the increase in the background traffic to ensure that their permitted limits doesn't change the service level of the intersection. So it isn't just today, it has to be also future looking in the way they do the math.
Okay.
But again, it's not CDOT intersections are not a negotiable thing, they're CDOT intersections.
Okay, and then what was the acronym for the SWPP, is that what it's?
The water supply plan?
Yeah, it's the water supply.
No, there's a safety, spill containment, that's the
containment.
one.
Yep.
So you had mentioned that the engineers that you guys are reporting on that and revisiting that to make sure everything is still, but that's self-reported by,
So it's in, those SPCC plans are inspected when any state agency comes in. So if the DRMS comes in for their inspection for the mine, they're gonna ask you for your spill plan and they're gonna need to have your inspection records and any spill records that have occurred.
Okay.
If CDP.
but it's your inspection that they're verifying that you have inspected?
They'll also do an inspection.
They will do an inspection,
look at it.
okay, I didn't know if it was just
No, you, so
self-reported or self-inspected.
there's no, yeah, it's one of these things where you don't send it in to anyone. It's sitting there as a record for inspection by, and in fact, county health could come in and inspect the spill plan if they want it. It has to be
Okay.
available for inspection.
Okay.
And so, I'm not sure that MSHA would care very much, cause it's not a safety thing, but
Okay.
any of the state agencies would. So the state agency for the mining would do it, the water would do it,
Right.
air folks would do it.
Okay. So then there was another thing that you had mentioned, that there was no chemicals in the process of the mining. I feel like it should be clarified that there's a lot of diesel fuel that's used, right? Is that, do you consider that, I mean, spills, things like that, that's all being managed in
Yeah,
that, but
and that's
there-
what the SPCC is
Okay.
for, is to help if like, let's say there is a hydraulic hose that spills or blows, the SPCC includes a plan for
Okay.
how we're going to safeguard everything, clean it up, report to whoever needs to be
Right.
reported to. And yeah, the chemical comment is more like there's no heavy mineral separation of the gold, like there's
Right.
no cyanide or things
Okay.
like that being used.
Okay, I just wanna make, just for clarity, like,
Yeah.
is there a new
Fuel-
process
fuels
that I
are-
know about that?
So
doesn't-
fuels and then fuel additives for the
Okay.
tier 4 engines, those are not included in that list of chemicals, but the state permits, like you said, have prescription for the methods and the ways that things are done.
Okay.
And so nothing in what's going on there triggers anything beyond normal gravel pit behavior. And the one chemical which is allowed are biodegradable flocculants, and those are used to settle like really clayey materials. But this site doesn't use them, but has gone through the process of getting permission from the state for the use of flocculants,
Right.
but choose not to use flocculants.
So at any time though, you're then able to use flocculants based on the permit as it is right now?
And the typical usage for that is if something was really clayey and it got into your recirculation pond,
Right.
you need to get the clay out of it because you don't wanna pump the clay back in through the wash plant, cause then it just puts clay on everything.
Right, okay.
But that's not been a problem with this site, so. But we typically would permit it to ensure that if there was an event on site that needed the flocculant added to the clay, that it could be.
And then, just so I understand, cause I'm a visual kind of person, in the beginning of the presentation, you had mentioned that there's gonna be limited visual impact to the area over time of the reclamation. But if you're potentially over 20 years moving out 6 million tons of material and it's not being replaced, I don't understand how that looks. I mean, unless there's a big air pocket or something that, I don't know, I'm just curious, because that would seem like more than limited impact. And maybe your term of limited, I just don't understand, and I just wanna
So it
know
comes,
about that,
what it
that's
is,
all.
so this is probably more of a geology thing, but if I get it wrong, Katie will correct me for sure, don't worry. So there's a bottom to the gravel that's called the lake beds, and it's related to the very old dam that was at Granite that originally had this area as a lake, and that blew out, it lowered down, and that forms kind of the bottom of the area that they're working. And there's a layer of gravel that's sitting on top of that clay bottom, and that, some portion of that gravel is being removed, and processed for gold placer operations, and most of that's going back in the hole. Some fraction of the gravel that got pulled out and processed is then gonna go away. And so you're gonna be removing a sort of a thin veneer across the whole area, and because it's a very large area, you're only really talking about lowering the ground level slightly within that area, so visually it will look like the same valley floor, but perceivably it's, it's just some fraction of feet down. And the gravels are from 3 feet to 20 feet-ish in thickness across the whole area, averaging in there, so it's not a big drop in there, so it's not like it's not when you drive past Climax and you can see, hundreds and hundreds of vertical feet being removed, it's gravel's a thin thing.
Okay. Do I have time for one more question?
I guess so, yes.
So one other question I have, is there anybody else that's doing something so far as sound goes, soundproofing, sound deadening, sound absorption to an area that can be done temporarily that would lessen the impact audibly for the area while certain operations are going? I mean, doesn't have to be permanent, but even if there was something.
The number one way to reduce sound is to be further from the source.
Okay.
And so.
So not by any kind of deflection, cause there's not a
You
lot
could put
to
it, so,
the north, is there many people to the south, correct? Is that-
yeah, so having it in a location which, first of all, is further from people is ideal, and they try to move the plants around in big places.
Right.
And then having a hill between you and the people, so sound travels line of sight, it can bounce around, but the bouncing distance counts in there, right? So if it's gotta go
Wind, all kinds of,
to the back of the canyon, to the front of the canyon, that's the distance the sound traveled. And so the sound drops 6 decibels for every doubling of the distance. So if you're standing right next to something loud, like we mentioned that in here, it got up to 85 decibels when people were kind of talking loudly. It's loud because we're close to it. If you were across the street from me talking loudly, it's not 85 decibels to you anymore. It's probably like 20 decibels because of the distance. And so distance and protecting line of sight are the number one ways to do it. Having like a thin wooden fence in between you and the sound is not particularly big change, but having like a mound of earth between you. And so I think that's part of, and I know that Chris has had comments where they're like, oh, I can really hear you guys, and they've made some changes about even the rotating the plant so that where the rocks are falling are on the other side of the plant from the side that was facing the houses.
Right.
Changed how much sound was there, and so best management practices, it's probably the best, and then being responsive to complaints through the complaint system is what the best bet is. We did talk about, evaluating backup alarms that are different, the not beeping ones. If that's a major complaint, we can revisit that as an option. That's often a lot of complaints are the beeping, more so than other standards.
Okay.
If you haven't heard of them, like a lot of the brand new machines,
Yeah, they're
have a
annoying.
swish, swish.
Yeah, well,
Have you
okay.
heard that?
Oh, I've heard, yeah,
Where they don't do the beep beep anymore, it's like this swish, swish, it's a whole
Right.
different frequency.
right.
Apparently it, still lets people know you're there, but it's not nearly as
Okay.
intrusive.
We should still fix it.
What's that, an
MSHA
MSHA still lets,
Those are good, I mean, the backup alarm is a good option to
Okay.
look at, but most of it is like distance,
Right.
having something between you and there, and then sometimes like orientation of
Okay.
the machine.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a requirement by OSHA for a certain loudness of those beeping for safety, which is.
Yeah, it has to be so loud.
Yeah, it's very important as well, I get that too. Okay.
But yeah, that would be the typical way to do it, and they are already doing some of them, they don't have the swishing backup alarm, but.
And I don't know if you're able to say how much gold are you pulling out of there annually or ounce wise, are you able to?
I mean, I think it has to be reported, doesn't it? Of some
I
sort?
think it's probably good.
Oh, it's not public, so the state records it,
Okay,
but.
fair enough, yeah, I was just curious.
I think the state records it, there's a process to it, and then some things are kept confidential.
Right. Except the price of gold is $3,400 some dollars a share now, so you guys are definitely making more money in these last couple of years, so, at least last year.
But the big thing that the change in gold price does is it changes the recoverable reserves, so it means that stuff that was maybe not mined 2 years ago may be worth mining as a now. It isn't so much gonna change annual type of things, but it
Or
might
upgraded beepers, or
beepers.
sound deflection measure, I don't know, I'm just.
Okay, are you good? Are you good? Can we, okay. Andy?
I've asked most of the questions I wanna ask at this point. I think the rest of my questions are, for later dates or further considerations on other subjects.
Steve Stevens, are you still on there?
Yes,
Hi, did you have any questions?
no, no.
Okay. Dave Clark Barrow, you still on there?
Yeah, no questions, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Tharp, are you still on there?
I'm here. I feel like everybody's asked such wonderful questions. I don't have any further to say.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bullock?
Yeah, it might be worth asking ACA if they plan on closing their pit. A comment was made that they were considering closing or running out of material. Then we're hauling material from Buena Vista because the other pit up on the pass has closed already. So it may be worth reaching out to ACA and see if if that's true or not.
And this is not gonna necessarily be a pit where people can go access, and this is gonna be sales in another way to county entities, to not like a public pit like Pine Ridge. Is that what it's called, Pine Ridge?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it would be a publicly available pit, so if a local contractor needed a load of screened rock for someone's.
Oh, well, okay.
It would be publicly available, and I think we had a comment earlier that effectively the consumption of gravel within the community is the consumption of gravel. Having another gravel pit doesn't necessarily change how much gravel gets consumed, it just changes where it gets hauled from. And so I think that Buena Vista is a good point to look at, is that if material is not supplyable from immediately within the community, it gets hauled in from a long distance. And so that's the biggest thing to remember with construction materials, is that it's a community used resource, in that if you don't have a location here, it's coming from somewhere else, right? You still pave your roads, you still make basements, you still pour patios. It's where within the community you wanna pull from, and do you wanna haul from Buena Vista if the supplies are limited here? And sometimes you'll even, if there's a limit on how much can come out of that pit annually, the other pit, you'll be pulling from Buena Vista anyways, because the market has a demand which is moving on that. So that's, I think that was actually a really good comment, that having a gravel pit doesn't change gravel consumption.
And the longer the haul, generally the more expensive the gravel is.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
two more.
No, go for it.
How much deterioration in level of a service is required to go from B to C? I think we're at B now at that intersection, is that right?
I believe that's what the study.
So what would it take to get to C?
That's what their math shows, right? So the allowed limits on the permit would not allow it to go down to a C.
Okay, so.
And if for instance, the traffic was starting to get close to the limit or exceeded the limit for that peak hour volume, so it isn't just annual, it's like the worst hour of the worst month, then that's when CDOT is going to revisit the requirements for the intersection.
I'm just wondering, how will they know?
Well, we've committed as a condition of approval that there's a report given to the county for the truck trips generated by the site.
Right.
So that was our recommendation, to put that condition of approval in there, so that there is a closed loop on the iterations of, is that intersection good enough?
I'm also wondering, lower the speed limit to 55, because it's gonna turn to 55 in just a couple of miles anyway, going north.
We have to see that.
I know, that's a CDOT thing, okay.
Again, we have very little control over what CDOT
I
says.
understand, I just tried to find out, if things don't work out, like we hope, then what's the trigger to improve? situation, and I'm not
And I think
hearing
it's
it.
gonna require a lot of community, county conversation with CDOT. And like we've had to do before with like, and we still should have a flashy pedestrian crosswalk for CMC, for instance, on CDOT. And we have to just keep saying, hey, we still think this is a concern, even though your math may not show that it is. And I think that that's, so if there notes to be a concern, and I think as the applicant's saying, if they have this built in for an annual review within the county, and there's any incidents, then that continues to be this conversation with CDOT. Unfortunately.
And we talk about events on Harrison Avenue, but there's also a race, I think it goes down part of County Road 10, bike race of some kind, I think there's a running race, so I might wanna modify some of this, not to limit it to just to Harrison, but events, community events.
I mean, the wording of that, the intent of the operator is that if there are any detour requirements that happen on the state highway, then that we're following the rules. That's the biggest thing, is when something on a state highway, it's very hard to regulate what it is, right? You can't tell someone to get off the state highway and drive around the outside of the town and then get back on the state highway, because there's a process to having a permanent detour that's in there, right? And so you guys know how hard that is. And we wanna support the county however is reasonable in that, but we can't. Once a truck is on a state highway, it's on the state highway, and the intent is the truck goes to the nearest place to get off the state highway and then make its delivery. And so it's very hard for us to prescribe to a contractor, if you have a load of gravel, you have to drive a special route, because it's the intent to get them on the state highways and use the state highways.
I was thinking County Road 10.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just thinking County Road 10. And the use of the fire station, recycling garbage.
Absolutely, and to your point, access on the state highway is still done from a county road, which is within the local jurisdiction, and when we have closures of Main Street and we have 70% of our population commuting, it is our only north-south access through town, and so we've asked other projects like the Slag project voluntarily, wasn't a problem, they simply wouldn't operate during those times when, because they understand the impact to our community and what that means, and that we are very challenged for emergency response. We're very challenged because we are a community of commuters, and so it's something that we've asked, and in this particular access, this operation doesn't have direct access to the highway. They get that from a county road. So this is a little bit different than simply looking at whether or not they could operate on the county road similarly to any other user of the state highway system. This is a little bit different. We're also asking them to be cognizant of what that impact is on our community.
I don't have any more questions, but I know we're gonna discuss stuff. My only concern is, are we gonna have enough time to discuss it, or can we move that to another day to discuss more? I don't know,
Yeah, I think the process from here is that we will, if there's no other question, I'm sorry, we just probably don't have time tonight to do more public. But if we did, I think it's probably in the best interest of the community and the applicant to continue this evening. And once we're done with questions that involve the applicant and commissioners, then we need to do those now before we close public hearing. At the time the public hearing gets closed, then commissioners will exit the meeting, and we will then go into our discussion phase of the application and make any motions from there. Our motion is, just to reiterate to everybody, is a recommendation to the county commissioners, who then will make a decision on this at their next meeting. So that's kind of how I think, and it at least would be of my opinion that we finish this out, because I think that there's so much that gets lost if we table discussions from here.
Fair enough.
Any other questions then for, that involve the applicant, before we go into discussion phase? Commissioners on Zoom or, planning commissioners?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay.
There's something in the chat, I don't know.
Okay, well, with that, planning commission,
See, there was something in the chat, I just know, just to make sure.
Can I ask a question?
No, we're all done
Oh,
with
okay.
public comment at this point, if you've already had a chance to speak.
Okay.
If we are done with that, then planning commission, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing portion of this meeting.
A motion to close the public hearing portion of the meeting.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, commissioners, go enjoy some dinner.
Yeah.
Heather?
Are we not coming back?
I do wanna say that the meeting, or the, board meeting that this will be decided on is May 20th.
May 20th is
May
when
20th.
our meeting is to discuss
Okay,
this.
so I'm not
We
coming
have
back
no
in
other
here after
items
you
on our
guys.
agenda tonight, so you
Wow.
are free to go home. Public, you may stay and listen to our deliberations and hear what we determine, or you're also free to go. And again, like I said, the decision will be made by the county commissioners in the May meeting.
May 20th.
May 20th.
So not next
Thank you
Tuesday,
all.
following,
Thank you.
Thanks.
following regular meeting.
All right, you ready to discuss?
Well, it was fun while it lasted.
Alright, yeah,
See you guys
it was
later.
really short, but short and cold.
Thank you, have a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah, does somebody particularly want to start?
So I'm just gonna say, like, I understand the importance of, I thought we heard a lot of good comments, both sides. There was definitely a lot of public concern on the audible impact and the impact to the traffic. And so I definitely think that's an important piece of it. I do have some reservations with, you know, it doesn't seem like the county is gonna benefit a whole lot from the operations. But you know, that's speculative as well, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's tough, cause I think our county benefits tremendously from having these gravel pits. I think it's really important to have it locally, just because our building costs and everything are already so expensive, to have the material close to home is a benefit that I think feels a lot more intangible and harder to understand, and see upfront. So I see huge benefit that way, and that's what makes me very torn on this application. If this application was just like the dream location of like at the bottom of the airport intersection, I'd be like, sweet, this is easy,
Right.
just do this. But this isn't where it is, and so then we deal with the fact that it is impacting residential neighborhoods and more traffic concerns than if it was just bordering the highway. And so I think that that's what makes this a very tough conversation. You know, I think that noise is inevitable from an operation as it currently exists, let alone the impact of it increasing from here.
and I don't see the demand of having access to the gravel going up, or you have more of a supply by having a second place to get those materials from, but it's not like it's gonna be
I think
dependent
that
on
would
the
be us
building process.
speculating that there isn't, but I can't imagine that our demand isn't going up. But I don't think that's
You know what I
what we
mean,
can
though, like,
guess.
I don't think it's like, oh, we got another plant now, man, people are buying twice as much because it's just.
No,
how
but
it
our current
works.
resources are changing. So like
True.
we used to have 2 pits, now we have 1.
And I
ACA
think
is
Matt
close.
brought up a good question, is there any plans for that other
Right.
pit to close down? I mean, and you never know, right? And it's not a guarantee how much that they're gonna be putting out every year, just that we know there's a maximum.
Mhm.
But there could be, well, we don't need to put out as much right now, for whatever reason, I don't know. So it's not like you're gonna be banking on any kind of sales tax numbers that would benefit, you know, tremendously or some, I don't, that's that economic benefit.
Can I interject here on topic quickly?
Oh, and Matt, you shouldn't be here anymore if you're still
This is
here, Matt
Steve.
Bullock. You're kicked out. Sorry, just a second, Steve. Is
Or we
Elsa
can-
still
we
on
can-
the issue?
We can remove him too, I think.
Okay. Not that it's, I never understood that rule anyway, but.
Yeah, I think we remove.
Sorry, Matt, bye. Okay, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Okay, so, just to duck.
Oh, Steve, I'm sorry, we're only catching like every fifth word you're saying.
Hear me better?
No, not really.
Can't hear me at all?
Yeah,
Now we
that's
can hear
better.
you a little bit better.
Sorry, I'll try to speak up.
Oh, there you go.
Um,
Oh,
Only
no.
one.
I think it's your connection perhaps. Maybe, are you on a phone? Maybe turn off your video. Cause it's just garbled. I know he's out of town. Thank you, Steve, for doing this while you're out of town. Now you're muted, sorry.
Okay, I'm running, I'm done video, does that help?
I think
Yeah.
that's better.
Go ahead and try.
Alright, so one of the concerns I have along with David's about traffic, I agree, an accelerator needs to be more than a decelerator. I mean, we need to. I'm really concerned we're going to have deaths on this situation. So that's bigger than just CDOT and a traffic analysis. It's a full-blown safety analysis. I don't know if there's any recourse for that at all, or if someone else can look at that, but we're going to lose lives out here on that intersection. It's just a matter of when, not if. People are going to hit those trucks. If for any reason Titan Gold gets any sort of state or federal contracts, I can imagine a time when we're going to be delivering at night. There's no lights out there. It's going to be a bad situation. It's a shame that CDOT did this rudimentary analysis and thinks it's adequate. So I'm going to throw that out there as a comment. I'm not asking any questions. The only thing I would say is if there's some other sort of safety analysis, we ought to look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good
and
question.
I think there was a great comment, I don't know who said it, but about the fact that people going around these trucks. I think that happens all the time up on Climax. Not going around their trucks, but just people going around, people around corners and whatnot, and that's becoming more and more of a problem, but, yeah, I would, second that sentiment of Steve, and, it's a shame that they don't put more into it from CDOT, but it sounds like there's not much that we can do about that. I don't know how else you would, cause you can't say, hey, no, we're gonna do this anyways and add an acceleration lane to the north as well, because we want to, even though you're saying it's not okay,
Correct, cause it's
that's
their
what
right
it sounds
of way.
like, you can't,
Correct, it's their right of way
you can't
How far
dictate
does
to them.
the CDOT right of way extend onto County Road 10?
That's a good question, I don't know that we know that, like off the top of my head, we could pull up a map, we could come back with that information, but.
Seems like turning lanes on County Road 10 would help a lot, even if you don't have the acceleration, deceleration on 24. And I know I'm trying to solve the problem, but.
Yeah, no, I know, that's a good point though, like as far as it making it slightly different on County Road 10.
Because everybody has to come to a full stop coming off of County Road 10, whether they're going north or south. So
My
it's one
problem
at a
with
time.
2 lanes would be, I think it decreases your vision. So to me, it's another traffic study person, engineer looking at that, because I think that if you have a truck here waiting to turn right, and this car is next to that truck trying to turn left in a different turn lane,
Yeah.
I think it changes things pretty significant. I actually think that's more dangerous. But I don't discount any of this, because I think that's the problem, is these highways have been, because they're 2-lane roads and their traffic has increased so substantially, you know, where CDOT does a lot of I mean, I think they add into their math rubric the idea that there's a lot of people not following the rules, but I don't know if they know really how much they're not following the rules, and how many times people are passing in there and doing all those things right in that section, that shouldn't be. So I think it's tough, because, we can sit here and come up with ideas, but we aren't experts in that field, and that's why we rely on the experts in the field to tell us that. But I agree that the 2 + 2 for them isn't making 4 today, but we also can't solve something when we're not the experts in it, so I don't know where we go with that.
And this is just one aspect. I think there's other things, like I still would like to talk about the zoning issue. And how that is reported or was reported, or that understanding, or.
Right.
I would like a little more clarification on that. So I'm not saying I don't wanna talk about, I just.
No, I
there's a
mean, I
lot
think there's
to
nothing
this.
else we can talk about as far as that intersection goes, it's a problem, and I think it stays on a problem on all of our lists tonight when we're making a decision. I just don't know that there's any solution that we can change to that intersection problem. Or we can consider some sort of condition.
Well,
I
that's
just
what I
don't
was
know.
gonna ask is,
Well, and those big, I think there was something about signs that are more visible, like trucks entering highway or flashing something. Or someone mentioned that, or did I read that somewhere? I don't quite remember, but. I mean, are those kind of signs possible in those locations during a certain time when they're little, you know, like they have the stop signs
Those are all
with the flashers?
CDOT mitigated,
That's all.
decided as well, it's all their right of way. So they decide what signage gets put in their right of way, they could decide.
But I mean,
what-
there's temporary construction signs that you see when
Mhm.
they're doing work on a road or,
By CDOT.
oh, that's all by, okay.
You know, I guess staff would venture to say that, you know, I think Public Works did a really great job of trying to document and express our operational concerns, safety and operational concerns at this location. But I can't say, Melissa's suggesting that maybe we're not done, going back to see that and, attempting to have a conversation based on the input that we hear from the planning commission. We do have some time, knowing that the board can't render a decision on this until May 20th. So there could be, you know, I like when we can move forward and we're not tabling issues, but it's just something for thought. It's something for thought if there is further work that you want staff to do, or further work that, communication that you want us to have with our CDOT partners around this, and tell them at what point we're at. It's just throwing that out there as another option.
Yeah, I think that's good, and for us to think about as an option for this evening, and that way, cause I agree that I don't wanna spend too much time trying to solve this issue, and there are a lot of other issues that we're not talking about yet, so I'd like to kind of touch on all of those before we say, okay, we've checked that box. Like, let's know that that's still a thing we need to keep talking about, but
Fair enough, yeah.
yeah, so what was the next one that you had?
Oh, I just wanted to talk about the zoning.
Oh, the
'cause
zoning.
I was not 100% clear
this has happened a couple of times over the years, and Ann can speak to it more so, is that at some point we had a mapper come in and something got missed, or something got shaded incorrectly, and so the understanding here is that at the time that they pulled their first CUP, the map showed, and that's what most of us go on for zoning, is that that property was zoned AF. And that's the premise, and that was the conditional, the way that our use table works, the conditional use permit was approved based on the fact that that property was zoned AF. However, there is no official documents showing that that property was ever rezoned to AF, and that means its proper zoning should still be RUR, even though there was some mention that it should be changed to AF, it doesn't look like that ever actually happened. So, but my understanding, so that applies to the previous conditional use permit. My understanding tonight is that this conditional use permit would technically be fine under either zoning.
That's correct. You know, the basis of what staff wanted to do was be very transparent in regarding the background on the land parcel. That rezoning was a partnership between Lake County and the city of Aurora, so as Katie mentioned this evening, you know, this was unbeknownst to anyone that's leased the property. Their client, Titan Gold, would have had no reason to know this. But we did want to bring forward that the true zoning of this is rural, and it was a joint application between the property owner, City of Aurora, and Lake County. So it was a very intentional down zoning of the parcel. And had that been known at the time when City of Aurora inquired, then that lease would not have moved forward because it was not an allowable use under the RUR zoning. However, the current application for the gravel mining extraction is a conditionally allowed. It was conditionally allowed in the previous zoning and in the current zoning. So felt like it was very germane to the history of the parcel, and again, a party leasing the property would not have any reason to question that the property owner was certainly part of any issue with that reason.
So even though there was a discrepancy in the zoning that was there, a conditional use permit would still allow in that zone.
So
Is that, I just wanna make sure that
staff spent quite a bit of time once this was discovered, and what precipitated this was current staff knowing the history of the city of Aurora buying 2 ranches in Lake County, and when this application came in, current staff didn't process it, but kind of questioned what the zoning status of that, and then going into further investigation, realizing that the zoning that was on the map was incorrect. Again, just based on ongoing negotiations with the city of Aurora, reservoir discussion and water rates and different things that happened at that time, that the ranches were purchased. So it was just a deeper dive because when we started looking at this point in time in 2025, 2024, started questioning that zone didn't seem accurate.
Yes, it's for either zone would allow for them to apply for this conditional use permit.
okay, that's what I was wanna make sure I understood that correctly. Okay.
As far as the concerns about the impacts of the mining operation itself, I think the permit to incrementally increase those operations by adding a crushing function doesn't really substantially change the impacts in my mind, in terms of noise or dust or any of the contaminants, potential contaminants. Yeah, I think it's really just the off-mine property issues that I'm hearing the biggest concerns about.
My concern with additional noise impacts is the loading of the trucks. I think that's noisy, and so that's my concern, is that you've got however many trucks going in there and getting rock thrown on the back of them, that's not gonna be quiet. And so that's where this is where I come to a place where this is a really tough one, because I think those are reasonable concerns. And I guess with some of the concerns with CDOT and with some of the concerns with noise. And perhaps, and just to say this out loud, perhaps after hearing all of the concerns this evening, it would make sense to even the applicant to table this and come back with additional information on ideas of ways of mitigating the noise and addressing the traffic concerns. Because I think the noise is an issue, I've heard that a lot, I understand the idea and why the restrictions are in place, and I understand that we're gonna have noise, and I agree that there are lots of people who just don't want any noise, and I would love that too, but that's probably not reality. But I also agree that this can be a lot of noise, and whether it's 70 decibels or not, I don't know, but it's still echoing through that valley up there. I've heard it, and it is noisy, and it just sounds like you're on a construction site all the time, and it may not be super loud like it's next door, but you still hear it. And I think that's a fair concern for that residential area. Like I said, I wish that if there was, I wish there was a little knoll between Panarch and this property, because otherwise I think it's pretty ideal, and I do think that the applicant has been a good partner to the community thus far in handling things well, but I think the noise thing, and I just wonder, and I don't know what the answer is, I don't know if there's better options for timing or where trucks get loaded or anything like that that can get creative here to help us feel better about the noise impacts on the community. And then the potential for more conversations with CDOT. Those are my two big ones.
And if I missed general arrangement layout of the mining operation, I understand the mining has to move wherever they're following the gravel, but perhaps the crushing can be at some central location as far away from Panarch as possible with berms surrounding it, so all the truck activity and the crushing activity is isolated. You know what I mean?
I would just assume that you have to transfer the material to that spot anyway. So it is one, I don't know though, but that's where I'm thinking, I'm just wondering if, as much as I feel like a lot of people would like to know an answer to this, I think that it could be beneficial to everybody to table this and reopen if there's additional information.
And I just wanna also mention, there was one resident that stated that they were pleased that there was a reduction in the hours, but that Saturday was a concern. And we're saying, I think it said 8 to 12 on Saturday, that's 4 hours, can you not split that among the week and just have it operations Monday through Friday? And give all the people that are working there as well time at home with their family, instead of working on a Saturday, and effectively, make it later in the day, 1 hour extra during Monday through Thursday or whatever, effectively does the same, I don't know. But I mean, we're talking 4 hours of work on a weekend that could be done during the week, since that was already reduced from 7 AM to 7 PM. I don't know where
Yeah, I mean, I agree that there was one person who said
something
Saturday,
like
but
that.
I feel like there were a lot of people who said it didn't matter, it was during the middle of the day that it bothered them. The truck traffic, the additional truck traffic is an issue with that, and then, but yeah, I guess.
Well, you're saying getting creative in certain ways, like maybe.
But I'm not saying we get creative, I'm saying that if the applicant
Right,
wants to get creative,
exactly,
that I just wonder if we want to, especially because I do think that there's enough question here about what can an additional conversation with CDOT result in to help us, because, and I know for me, those are the two things, noise and CDOT, and I think that if there can be additional information and additional focus on that piece, that makes it a little bit easier to get through. Are there additional things beyond?
Well, also, if for some reason CDOT does agree to do more improvements to the intersection, that may bring the economics of hauling gravel, the wages turned out to be too expensive to make any money by making those changes, so could go either way. Same with any other mitigation measures on site, and things like stockpiling, so that you're not driving trucks all day, every day, but just certain times.
Right, yeah, that could be.
And when we talk about changing the hours, then it comes into overtime and the operational costs, so that all weighs in on these decisions from the applicant's point of view.
I'd like to make a motion to table for staff to look into additional input with CDOT partners before,
And we need to say with the option to reopen public hearing.
with the option to reopen public hearing.
Date certain to bring it back.
Yeah, we need to do,
Was that
So-
That would be the 12th, would be the 12th would be your next available, and then the other date that we have would be the, although you've already got 2 files and the joint comp plan discussion with the city on that agenda. So, the date that we came up with tonight of the
27th,
28th
or 28th,
would be the other option. So we have about one
we're
for
going to midnight,
the 28th, the 21st, or the 12th is a comp plan, 5/12 is a comp plan, the 28th is, the backcountry. So, I believe. So that's why I was saying the 12th is really already a pretty full committed agenda. So we've got 2 hours with the city, and we have.
yeah, that's already a 3-hour limit.
I mean,
So,
is there a reason why we can't go beyond when the BOCC?
Yeah, we just move to the next meeting.
yeah, let's take the decision to the next.
I mean, there's no other pressing thing as why we would need,
I'm sure the applicant is anxious, but we only can, meet the deadline, what we have available.
I don't think it's gonna happen this year with the intersection
Right,
acceleration in anyway, so.
Yeah.
Steve or Dave, do you have any input on either of those things?
No, I think it's important to make CDOT really aware of the risk, because whatever we can do, whatever Melissa can do to bring people, have them do a visit, but we need to do that. We need to do that due diligence.
Okay. Well, I think it
I would,
allows, yeah, go ahead,
I'm
Dave.
sorry. No, I support your, the idea to table. I think like right now I struggle to see how it meets the approval criteria of not being detrimental to public health. I just need more information around, the noise and the hauling at that intersection of 10 and 24 before I could feel good about that approval criteria.
Okay.
So in addition to your motion for us to continue conversations with CDOT, did you also want to direct the applicant to consider the release?
Well, if we're continuing it, doesn't it let them address anything that we brought up today? Okay. So just put that out there, that anything that was brought up that you want to put extra focus on, we would allow time in the next reopen public hearing, allow there to be further presentation, or what have you, from staff and that.
Wait, do I have to say it all over again?
Just say what she said.
Can we ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I wasn't aware that the code allowed for a public hearing to be reopened if there's a continuance of the decision, so like once public hearing was closed, it was closed. I believe this was a thing that we talked about back in 2019.
Well, they can reopen additional information that's being brought forward. They have to reopen the public hearing additional information.
Okay.
Like if there's new information from CDOT.
Correct.
we would
If
have
there
to-
is no new information from CDOT, then
But if there's no new information from the applicant and there's no new information from, then we would say that and then.
And then we
we
would
need to
reopen.
reopen public hearing to introduce the information.
Yeah.
So unless there, if the outcome of this is there is nothing new to introduce, then we wouldn't reopen.
How would that work then if say we do introduce something new, do we have to send out notices again for another?
Then the next hearing will be public on this, but there won't be new notices sent out.
We continue it to a date certain, then we don't have to revise.
Okay, so to,
A motion to table, so.
Before you
table
do
this-
that, can I verify the number? I put a chat in about how much water Lake County could get from Box Creek Reservoir. The 40 acre foot that the county already has is accurate. The county will also get 136 acre feet when the reservoir is finished. If the county spends some more money, they could double that to 272 acre feet. And I got that from reading the augmentation plan. Just to verify what I put in there. The long view is that the county's gonna be really happy.
Eric, I'm sorry, but public comment's already over, so we can't actually, this is out of order at this point. If you have
Okay.
additional questions for staff, because we are tabling it, you're welcome to submit those questions to staff and have those conversations between now and the May 28th, but we'll need to go ahead and move forward with this next motion.
Thank you very much and excellent work tonight. Thank you.
I motion to table this evening's meeting so that staff can, have some more conversations with CDOT partners
To May
to May
28th.
20th. 28th, sorry. 28th.
Good, I'll second it.
Alright, any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And Katie, I think just to answer your question, when we take it to the board, since they have a joint public hearing, we don't reopen public hearing when we go to the board. But if we're gonna introduce, if we happen to introduce more information, it would have been referred back to the planning commission and reopened the public hearing. So I think maybe that was because we have that funky joint hearing thing, and once it goes to the board, we don't reopen it.
Motion to adjourn, unless there's anything else in the, hang on, talk about.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody who has come, thank you applicants, thank you everybody for your time. We do really, I know most public has left, but we really, really appreciate public involvement. So, thank you for being here.
Thank you.